Addicts. Like, hey, Scoob, did you hear Nikki Blake is hosting a Scooby-Doo panel? No. Yeah. Like on today's Scooby-Doo episode, Scooby-Doo and Shaggy meet Nikki Blake. Yeah, and a Scooby Panel. Like, we need to get this puppy started. Okay, Nikki Blake, take it away, Scooby-Doo.
Welcome to Scooby Panel number 5. Today we'll be talking about the life lessons of Scooby-Doo. Before we start, I would like everybody to introduce themselves. So Cameron, let's start with you.
For sure. Hey everyone, my name is Cameron. I run Scooby-Doo and Cameron Too. I'm a Scooby-Doo collector, and like I said, I'm just a big fan of Scooby-Doo.
Bradford?
Hi, I'm Bradford Smith. I write fan scripts and that kind of stuff. I've been a lifelong Scooby-Doo fan, and my website's bradfordwritescooby.com.
Derek?
Hi everybody, my name is Derek Queen. I'm a Scooby-Doo collector. I run the Doo Central Instagram and Tumblr pages, and then I'm a co-host on That Groovy Scoopcast, which is a Scooby-Doo podcast.
And Wendy?
Hi guys, I'm Wendy Brydge. I'm a commissioned artist and a major Scooby-Doo collector.
And I'm Nikki Blake. I run ScoobyAddicts.com. So the first topic that we have is Scooby taught us that the real monsters are human. That is one of my favorite memes. I love this one. It's so true. And what are your thoughts on it? Cameron, let's start with you.
So growing up, Scooby-Doo's been my favorite cartoon character, as you can tell. And, I've always loved that, after every mystery, there's always been, where they can unmask the villain, and it's always a person, it hasn't been real. It kind of taught us, when you watch Scooby-Doo, you really think about it. It's something that resonates not only with kids, but also with adults. Something that, like you said, teaches them that, not everybody's who they say they are. Not every person's good. Not every person in the real world is who they say they are. Because, when you watch the Scooby-Doo cartoon, everybody looks friendly in the beginning, and then they'll unmask the villain at the end, and it was the real estate developer, or it was the bank manager, and so it just shows that people actually have intentions in life, and not everybody's good. I just, like I said, when you show that meme, I love it too. I know it was really trending. I think last year it was going all over social media. And like I said, it's something that, teaches kids and adults that, in Scooby-Doo, I feel like, and even we talked about this in previous panels, it's kind of like when you watch the cartoon, you escape from the real world. But there's also things in the cartoons that kind of give you life lessons about the real world. Be careful who you trust. You know what I mean? Always keep your guard up around people. Always have an open heart, but always still, like I said, just be careful, because you never know who's got good intentions, who's got bad intentions. So
The one thing that bugs me about that meme is when people add the phrase, "If that isn't deep, I don't know what is." That really drives me crazy, because, the meme is so good on its own, and then they put that on it and it ruins it for me.
it's kind of like a caption. You can only put so much, and then you're like,
Yeah.
okay, you're running it out.
Yeah. Bradford, what are your thoughts?
I thought they do a good job of showing that it's more about building trust with people. Like, the most trustworthy people in an episode of Scooby-Doo is the gang, because you know them, you've got that
Right.
trust built up. Everybody else you've met once, you've got a little bit of information about them maybe, but one of them's always going to turn out to be the person in the mask. So it's an interesting, I always thought it was kind of interesting approach, and they do a good job of telling you not to just believe the people in power all the time, because there's a bank manager that's a bad guy the one time. A lot of owners of things turn out to be the bad guy, and it's like people you would just assume oh, I can trust these people, but it's maybe be careful. And a few relatives have been the villains before too, so it's just be careful with anybody, which I don't know, I think it's a good lesson.
It is, and that really does mirror reality because, you know, a lot of times it is that public figure or it is that family member that you just have no idea is doing something. And so, yeah. Wendy, how about you?
Yeah, it is a really good lesson that can be applied in a lot of different ways. The episode that always sticks out for me, like Bradford mentioned how sometimes it's relatives, and one of Cam's favorite episodes, and one of mine too, Vampire Bats and Scaredy Cats. And Lisa's about to turn 18 and inherit this hotel. And her uncle Leon, who's raised her since she was a child, has tried to like drive her insane so that he doesn't have to hand over the hotel. And as a kid, you think like, wow, that's crazy. And then you grow up, and unfortunately, sometimes you end up with one of those relatives that obviously maybe it's not the same exact situation, but where you thought you could trust someone that you loved and that has essentially been with you your entire life. And then they stab you in the back and you think like, wow, Scooby was teaching me something other than you know what I thought. And it is a very good lesson to just keep in mind that, you know, like everybody said, you keep an open heart, but you really can't just trust everybody, and you shouldn't. And you should definitely strive to, you know, make friends. I never met my grandpa, but my dad, I grew up with my dad telling me something that his dad had always said to him, which was, if you live to be 100 years old and you can count your friends on one hand, you'll be a fortunate man. Mm-hmm. And that's so true, because we use that word friendship and trust, and it's very, very widespread. When in reality, how many actual friends, how many people that you trust do you really have? People that you just meet or that you went to school with and you talk to them once in a while, do they really deserve to be called your friends? Like, we use that word, and maybe we should reconsider that, you know, well, maybe they're more of an acquaintance. Like, do I trust you that if I'm in trouble, I can call you and you're going to come and help me? Because if I can't, that's okay. But that means that, you know, I don't consider you my trustworthy friend. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's interesting to view Scooby as an adult instead of as a child, and to see all of these really important lessons that I just can't believe that it wasn't on purpose. You know, that it was all just a coincidence, this beautiful little show that just happened to have all these great moral lessons and life lessons in it. And I really do think that the writers and stuff were thinking about instilling ideas and thoughts into little children that when they grow up, hopefully they'll remember them. And I feel like that is the best way to teach somebody. You know, you can't always just come out and like try and hammer it into them, because oftentimes that's just not how you're going to learn something. You can slip it in. It is obvious. We can look back on it. I mean, the whole fact that we're talking about this proves that it is obvious in the show. But as a child, you're not thinking consciously about it. Oh, here's a lesson to be learned. Don't trust these people. Be critical. Have a critical mind. When you meet somebody, be nice. Always be nice, but keep in mind that not everyone has the best intentions either for you or for other people. In a way, Scooby is kind of like the child's version of true crime, in a very mild manner, because I really like to watch true crime shows and things like that. And I don't like when people that watch that stuff call themselves enthusiasts, because I would never use that terminology for that stuff, because it is so awful. But I like to watch it because I'm like, no, this is things that we all need to know. We need to know that these are the people that are out in the world. Are there decent people in the world too? Of course there are. But you don't need to worry about them. Mm-hmm. It's all of the other people that will walk all over you, that will hurt you, that don't care about anything or anyone but themselves. And so in a way, I look at Scooby like that now, where it's a very mild introduction to the idea of these are the people that are in the world. Be careful.
Yeah. Derek, how about you?
I mean, The funny thing with that meme is that I've just seen it so many times. Like that's the most popular Scooby-Doo meme,
Yeah.
most likely. So I'm not saying I disagree with it, but I do kind of like roll my eyes because like everybody sent that meme to me at some point or another. And the weird thing is, while I completely agree with it, it's funny because I can't apply it in my own experience as a child, like with a lot of the Scooby media that I watched, because one of my first introductions to Scooby-Doo was Zombie Island. And it definitely resonates in that, where it comes to like, let's say, Simone and Lisa on the island. But the thing is, like, those monsters actually were real if you want to just be really like strict on the monsters are fake, because in the 80s a lot of Scooby-Doo wasn't necessarily just monsters and masks. But I think Wendy did really say it best when it comes to like, you really have to be careful with how some people present themselves and what their true intentions are. I also have to agree that Vampire Bats and Scaredy Cats episode is a really good favorite of mine, and that does really demonstrate, like, yeah, sometimes it's people who are just really close to you who have really sinister intentions, and it makes it hard even as a kid, because I think the first time I ever watched that episode, I was baffled. I'm like, oh my gosh, it was her uncle of all people. Like, that's the person that's the villain today. And even when you think of situations like Where's My Mummy, the Egyptian Scooby-Doo movie, where like Velma was the one that was kind of orchestrating everything, but like there were other people who had really ulterior motives in that episode, where like they don't have to necessarily be wearing the masks for the movie to be demonstrating that same message. So I think that it can still resonate even when the monsters are real, but I think a lot of people are usually talking about just where are you when they see that meme. But
yeah. So the next lesson is working together is better. For me, I always kind of compared group projects in school to the Scooby Gang, because I never felt like group projects went well. There was always one person that was doing all the work and everybody else was messing around. And I always felt like the Scooby Gang could work together so well. Why is this so difficult for us? So Bradford, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it seems like all of the series in the franchise do a really good job of like demonstrating how important teamwork is. Because I mean, even like Get a Clue, it's got, for the most part, just Shaggy and Scooby, but it's the two of them working together, going off of each other's strengths and weaknesses and really getting the job done. So I mean, it's a very good message for kids, especially because I know kids have a really hard time sometimes of, working with somebody else and getting along with other kids and all that kind of stuff. So it's probably one of the best lessons that the show has. Just, teamwork really just can make anything happen. You can achieve all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Derek, how about you?
I think that one thing to remember if you're like comparing like a school group project to the gang is that the gang have been demonstrated to be friends forever.
Right.
And then I always had that problem when I was in college and I would have to do a group project with people that I barely know. So I don't know what their work ethic is like. I don't know what their talents are. And here I am who, like, I can admit I can be a little bit of a control freak at times. So like I kind of like to have everything in its own little place. But I think like with the gang specifically, they really demonstrate that like they all have a similar goal and they're willing to reach that goal, regardless of like what the downfalls of the story are. Like if, let's say, Daphne gets kidnapped at some point, like she always does, they make an effort to find her and, still at the same time try to achieve the overall, goal of unmasking the villain. And I think that when I compare that to friend situations, I find that a lot more, I guess the word like appropriate, because I think I do try harder when I'm with friends as opposed to strangers. So it's always interesting, even when you see the gang having to team up with other people and seeing how they interact with different people. And they're always questioning how like Shaggy and Scooby accomplish anything. But The teamwork aspect is definitely there, and it's been there forever, and it's not lost on anybody, I don't think.
Yeah. Cameron?
Growing up as a kid, teamwork has been in everything I've done. I've had to learn it from an early age. So even when watching Scooby-Doo, I've always felt like I connected to Scooby-Doo in that way, because I think that's very important for kids and even adults to understand is teamwork. Like people always say, teamwork makes the dream work. One thing though I love about Scooby-Doo and how they teach teamwork is, Velma, Daphne, and Freddy are always, let's go solve the mystery. And people are always like, well, Shaggy and Scooby, they don't want to solve the mystery when they don't want to. And here's what I say to that. I say all 5 members of the gang have good hearts and they want to do teamwork because they know what they work together. And I know they split up from time to time, but they always come back together in that episode and they put all of their heads together and they solve the mystery. And you even see sometimes too, like when Shaggy runs away, he's like, I'm not doing this. And then he'll stop and he'll talk to Scooby. He's like, hey, but maybe we need to, maybe the gang needs this. And I've been seeing that more and more as some of the episodes I watch. Shaggy always acts like, man, I'm getting out of here. But he always turns around and he always, puts his best foot forward and puts his heart into it. And but I think that's very important, them putting their hearts, their minds together. Like I said, they split up, they come back together, they solve the mystery. And it also teaches, different personalities. Fred, he's the leader. Velma's a smart one. Daphne's more of the people person. Shaggy and Scooby, like I said, they're the heart of Mystery Incorporated. So, they all work together very well using different abilities and attributes. But when they come together, it's like everything flows well, and it's cool because, you see it with Scooby-Doo, you've seen it on other cartoons, but I feel like Scooby-Doo just teaches it well because, you need all the gang to get to have the teamwork, and I know there's, like I said, there's been Get a Clue and there's been other episodes where there hasn't been the full gang, but you see where some of them have just, like I said, they stepped up and they've done what they needed to do. And even if they get separated, they're like, okay, what would the other one do? And then they go forward and try to, do the best they can and stuff like that. I think it's really important. And I think it's always been cool. Like, I don't know, ever since I was little, I thought it was cool how 4 teenagers and a dog just hop in a van and, they just travel all over solving mysteries. And like I said, I know it's a cartoon, but it just, God, it's so like magical in a way because it just teaches people like, hey, it doesn't matter what background you come from, doesn't matter what the color of your skin is, it doesn't matter what's going on in your life. If you can find good, wholesome, hearty friends, and work together as a team, you can make some awesome things happen in life,
Yeah. Wendy?
I think I might be the odd man out on this one. And this was the one question, and I read it and I was like, oh my goodness, how am I going to answer this? Because the first thing I thought of too was, like Nikki said, was group projects in school. Even though I will admit, maybe it's not like a perfect comparison, but it is what I thought of because, that kind of, when you're a kid anyway, that is like the ultimate level of teamwork because you're relying on somebody else to get part of your mark. And I was always the one that didn't want to be in a group because I always ended up doing all the work. Even if it meant that, it wasn't always that the other students didn't want to do the work. It was that my parents were at home teaching me, like, be self-reliant. My parents never pushed teamwork, which, like I say, it's why I'm definitely the odd man out here because I understand that particular lesson and I do agree with it. And I think you do need, no matter what, you do need to learn to get along with other people and work with them, whether you want to or not. I think that for me is the key. There are going to be times in your life where you need to work with somebody else and you need to figure that out. You need to be able to do it. And so for me, when I think of teamwork and the Scooby Gang, I kind of learned to look at it less as each person bringing something different to the table and then all of those things combining together. And I started looking at it as, well, what is the thing that each person is bringing and how can I encapsulate each of the things myself, which might be kind of destroying the point of the lesson. Like, honestly, I freely admit that I could very well just be going off on that. I honestly, I can't help it. That is definitely a character trait of mine that I can be a team player, and I'm a very good team player, but I hate it. I hate it. I would rather do things myself, but you do always need some help. And I think that is an important thing that maybe that we can learn from this teamwork aspect of Scooby-Doo, that there are going to be times in your life where don't be stubborn. You may want to do it yourself, and you may be used to doing things yourself, but sometimes it is better to say, no, I need some help. Please, can you come and help me? And so, but I do think that if, as a child especially, if you do approach it from what's Freddie bringing to the group, what's Daphne bringing to the group, what is Velma bringing to the group, and how do all of those things mesh together to create the perfect team. And if I can embody all of those things myself, then when I am a part of a team, irrelevant if I want to be there or not the point. When I am in that situation, that at least I'm not going to be the weak link. I'm going to know how to handle myself. I'm going to know how to say, yes, what do you need? What can I do for you? You know, you can't always be in control. Like Derek said, I'm definitely kind of a control freak too. I like to have control. I don't like it when I have to defer to other people in any kind of situation. I feel much better when I'm making the choices for myself. I don't particularly like making choices for other people, but when it comes to me, I like being responsible for myself, and you be responsible for yourself. But that's not always the case. You can't always do that. So I think the way that the gang's dynamic works, and the fact that the writers kept it so clean, like there's no squabbling, they're just never fighting or backbiting or anything like that. They just mesh together, and they all are bringing something different. And as a whole, they create what I think they maybe intended children to emulate. Less about the parts, more about the whole, which kind of is the teamwork aspect, only internalizing it for you yourself as a person. I think it's completely valid both ways, either as like strict teamwork with other people, or how to make yourself a better person for a team in the future. I think both are valid, although I'm definitely more of the latter than the former.
Can I add something that you just made me think of, Wendy? Was when you were talking about like what you bring to the table, or then like how you're going to make yourself a part of the team. That was kind of making me think of the beginning of the 2002 live action movie, when the gang split up right at the beginning, because over the what was it, 2 years that they were apart, they were all doing their own thing until they all came to Spooky Island. And then a really prime example I'm thinking about is Daphne, where everybody's criticizing her for being the damsel in distress. And I think Fred and Velma were like making fun of her at the airport, being like, you're going to get captured by someone in like an hour. And then she's like, I actually like became a black belt in the last 2 years. So like I'm able to be sufficient now. And ultimately they do all realize like they're all friends, that they do need each other, but they were really trying in like that instance to do it on their own. But then it annoys me when the team, because I actually do disagree with you. They have squabbled a few times. Really good in that movie, and even the sequel, where after the whole museum attack, Shaggy and Scooby are even questioning why they're even there. And that one always, that conflict always annoys me with their team dynamic, because Shaggy, Scooby, like, you obviously are the ones that are like bringing the whole thing together. Like, you're not useless to the team. And I hate it when they make that a plot point in these stories, because it's obviously not true. It's been proven wrong time and time again. Yeah.
Wendy, would you say it was harder for you as a kid with the whole teamwork thing because you're an only child?
I would say that is definitely a huge part of it. Yes. My parents always taught me, like, the one thing that I always remember growing up is my dad saying to me from the time I was very, very little, he's like, honey, life is a show. Put on the best damn show that you can. Now, he wasn't saying to be disingenuous, but there have definitely been times in my life where I've been places that I don't want to be, with people that I don't want to be with. And I have to admit, I do pride myself on the fact that those people don't know that I didn't want to be there, because they didn't need to. It wasn't that anybody had done anything wrong, you know? So yeah, sometimes you do have to put on a show. Don't be a jerk, you know? Treat other people the way that you want to be treated all of the time, and just get on with it. So, but yeah, there was definitely being an only child for sure, because it kind of, your parents treat you more independent, just the fact that you're the only one, you know? Sometimes you have more responsibilities, sometimes not. It depends on your parents and your situation. My parents never, this might sound odd, but they never treated me like I was a child. They always treated me like I was the same as they were, like I was an adult. And I'm pretty sure my dad would agree with this, that it's the reason that since I was very little that, you know, teachers and friends of the family and stuff would always say, wow, she's so mature for her age, you know, she's a 4-year-old and she's carrying on a conversation with me. Well, that's because that's the way that my parents raised me to be. They treated me like that. They didn't treat me like I didn't understand things. My dad was constantly, if he read me anything, he would always stop and, do you know what that word means? Do you understand what's being said? And if I didn't, or even if I said I did and he could see that I didn't, he would take the time to explain it to me. And it's so weird, because obviously I very much relied on my parents, clearly, as an only child, which in a sense I would say is like a form of teamwork, you know, but it definitely did foster like a very, like, I can do it on my own.
Yeah.
I don't usually, we didn't have a lot of family anyway. And what family we did have, there was like very few children. I have one first cousin and he's like 25 years older than me. So,
Wow.
I mean, I obviously grew up with friends at school that were my age and things like that. But as far as outside of school, I was always around adults, always. I could remember my parents bringing me like to Bible study night and everything. I was the only kid there, and I would just sit in the corner and actually, you know, draw Scooby-Doo and Marmaduke and Garfield and things like that, and just sit there quietly, you know. And so being around adults all the time, it just, like, no other children around, it definitely did take away that, like, well, you got to get along, because who am I trying to get along with? You know, it was just like, you just need to get along with everybody regardless of anything, you know. And so yeah, definitely I would say being an only child was a huge part of it for sure.
Yeah. Is anybody else an only child? No, me either.
Sorry, Wendy.
Well, I actually kind of feel a little bit better now about being the odd man out, because at least now it makes sense.
You had a good point.
Yeah. So our next topic is covering more ground is key. So typically when the gang are looking for clues, they split up so that they can, you know, look in more places than just one. I'm kind of torn on this one, whether it's a life lesson or not, but Derek, what do you think?
I think it's funny when they split up in different groups. Like the show's made it kind of like a joke where, like, there was one where Fred and Shaggy were together and they're like, this just isn't working. So in terms of like, even like kind of calling back to the teamwork point, they work together best when they're with specific people apart. You know, Shaggy and Scooby distracting each other while Velma, Fred, and Down here are a little bit more focused. But I don't know, like whenever I'm watching a horror movie, for instance, like that's the last thing I feel like I would want to do is split up. It's like, no, everybody needs to stick together, because if the ghost or the monster or the killer or whatever is going on in the movie is nearby, like we're all together. We're not one-on-one, just, you know, just being picked apart and making ourselves more vulnerable in that sense. I get why they do it in terms of trying to cover more ground, find different clues in different places and all, but at the same time, I just think that you could kind of argue the Scooby-Doo, you know, when you compare it to a horror genre, which I think is the easy one to compare it to, that's not the advice I would give them. If were with them, I would be arguing to stick together because I would probably be like Shaggy, where I'm like, no, I would really rather feel comfortable if everybody just stuck together and we just stayed in the van and we don't go anywhere. That's my opinion with that.
Cameron, what are your thoughts?
You know, when you brought up this topic, the first thing that popped into my head was that image from the new Scooby-Doo movies where the Batmobile and the Mystery Machine are in the background. They're all covering the ground, like actually looking for clues. I don't know why that picture popped in my head, but I think it can be a life lesson. I think Scooby-Doo teaches us life lessons in many, many attributes, in many ways. Covering more ground, in a sense, could be, you know, in your life, seeing what life has in store for everything, you know, looking at every possibility life has. And I feel like in Scooby-Doo, you know, they're like, well, no, we're just going to go focus over here. They're like, no, we need to cover more ground. We need to split up, you know, like Fred speaking, you know, me, Daphne, and Velma are going to go over here to the haunted mansion. You guys go check out the cave. And so, you know, it's kind of like, and to me, and I may just be reading too much into it, but to me, it's kind of like those are opportunities. And that's how I take it in life. Like you want to focus on one place. No, there's many places you can go to. And that's what I think has been so cool about the Scooby-Doo cartoon. You know, some cartoons I watch, I feel like they stay in one place during the whole cartoon. But I feel like in Scooby-Doo, you know, they're always going to different places. They'll go to a haunted mansion, then they'll go to a graveyard, then they'll go over here, then they'll go over there. Like they're all over the place. The Mystery Machine just like racking up miles because it's like boom, 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 boom. They're all over the place. But like I said, covering more ground to me is, like I said, you know, more opportunities in life, looking at what you have right in front of you. So like I said, I could be reading too much into it, but I just feel like if you really stop and go back and watch the Scooby-Doo cartoon as an adult now, I feel like there's so many things that you can connect to real world problems and real world, you know, situations in life. So it's, like I said, that's how I take it.
Bradford?
I think Derek made a really good point I didn't think about with the horror stuff and splitting up and how bad an idea that is. But I thought one of the main reasons that they do split up is because like they are setting themselves up for success. Like Fred knows, you know, if he sends Shaggy and Scooby together, they do well together. And if he sends them to like the food court, maybe they're going to be a little more focused and they're going to they'll look at all the stuff that's there because they're going to want to eat everything. So he kind of plays to their strengths. And I think that might be the thought process there. You know, if you're going into something that you have some interest in, it's a little easier to like check stuff out. Like you're more interested in it or whatever. I would say my biggest complaint with them splitting up though is that they don't always seem to have a plan for regrouping or a plan for like, if somebody's in trouble, you know, maybe do something so we can all come back and find you or whatever. They kind of just, you know, let's split up and go our own ways and find what we find. So that always kind of bugged me a little bit because they need to have some type of plan to get back together because they're all split up everywhere. Like, I don't know, that always kind of bothered me a little bit, but I mean, it worked. It always worked for them. They found each other at the end somehow.
Yeah, I think that was my biggest thing with this is sometimes they split up and then they get into trouble and they just accidentally stumble on the group that's in trouble, whether it's like they fly through the door that they happen to be locked behind. So there really is no plan to regroup and come back together. And to me, it just, I guess it could be a lesson, you know, to not lock yourself in places. But yeah, I feel that way. Wendy?
I agree with Cameron. I think that this is one where it's best looked at from a less literal perspective, because Derek is completely right. I think that too all the time. I'm like, that is not safe. Especially think of Bedlam at the Big Top, where they were doing some dangerous stuff and they never should have split up ever, ever, ever in that situation. You know, so many bad things happen or are just stopped from happening, you know. Scooby up on that high wire. So I do think though that there is like a valid point to be made in the idea of covering more ground. And to be honest, this is an instance where I think that the whole splitting up thing was mostly done because it was a half-hour show. And they need to have all these clues found. And if they were going all these places together, it wouldn't work. You need more time. And so I do think that in this instance, that particular idea of, okay, we're going to always have them split up, I think was done as like a time thing. However, as I said, I do think that we can expand on that idea of don't just look here. You know, the point is we're trying to solve the mystery. Someone's in trouble. So you have to like branch out. You have to keep your eyes open. You have to think of all the different possibilities. Go here, go there, interview this guy, interview that guy. If you see something that looks out of place, investigate it because there's probably something there, you know, and even if there isn't, you know, eliminate things that are not what you're looking for. That's valid as well, you know. Sometimes the clues that you don't find can be as big of a clue as a clue that you do find, you know. Well, we can rule out old Mr. Johnson, you know, whatever, he can't be the villain. Because I think people can get very like tunnel vision, making decisions in life, or even whether they're big ones or just something like what I'm gonna have for dinner or whatever. But it does go bigger than that. Life decisions, things that you're going to do, and it is good to have like a broader perspective. You know, things are not, there's more than just what's beyond the end of your nose. I know I'm always saying to my dad, if we're watching TV or something and I get frustrated with people, and I'm always saying they can't see past the end of their nose. They're not thinking ahead. They're not paying attention to anything around them. It's just like whatever's right here, that's all there is, and they don't care about anything else, and that's why they make bad choices and they get into trouble and stuff. So I think we could definitely take that as a life lesson, that cover all the ground. Consider all of your possibilities, because you will have a much greater chance of finding the truth with more information. If you stick to just this little spot here, you might find a clue, but you are very likely going to misinterpret what that clue means. And that means you're going to get it wrong. And that's not the goal. It's not the goal to get it wrong. You got to get it right. Because when you get things wrong, you can end up being the one hurting other people with making your mistake like that. So I think it's a good lesson. I would say that this is, I don't know, I'm curious if you guys agree. Obviously, we're having a bit of trouble articulating it, but as a kid, if I think back to how I behaved and things like that, I kind of feel like maybe we did learn this lesson from Scooby-Doo, only it was so subtle that we can't put words to it. Like, we know it had an impact, and the way that I think it was meant to, in like a positive way that we can apply it to life. But maybe it was just such a subtle thing. Like, even as a kid, I don't think I took it literally, like, oh, this means if there's a group, we got to split up and like literally everyone, you know, go every which way. I don't think that I ever took it like that. So I wonder if maybe it was written even better than we thought. You know, we already knew it was written really, really well, but maybe they did an even better job than what we've been giving them credit for, because I think we did actually learn that lesson, given what we've all said about it, and just didn't realize it.
Yeah, I think it was written really well, where you, as a kid, you could kind of understand the life lessons without realizing that you were understanding the life lessons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So our next topic is everyone has their talent and it's okay to be different. So one of the things that I thought about was the Scooby community. You know, a lot of us are posting kind of the same thing. You know, we're posting our collection pieces, we're posting news, we're posting about episodes, things like that. But then you also have, you know, we're doing different things too based on our talents. So Bradford, you're writing. Derek, you know, you have your podcast. Wendy, you're doing art. Cameron, you just have an insane amount of stuff that everyone is so jealous of. But you know, everybody's kind of doing their own thing. So it's nice. You know, I thought about doing interviews, and I have some interviews that I did years ago on my website, but I decided to do more of a panel because, you know, Tiger's doing the live interviews, and I didn't want to do something that's similar to what he's doing. But it kind of made me think about that, just because everyone's using their talents. You know, Will is creating art for pretty much everybody in the Scooby community, which is amazing. But what are your thoughts on everyone having their talent and it being okay to be different? So Wendy, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think this is another one that was done in, and I should have said this earlier too, because Derek pointed this out and I was like, oh, I should have specified that I was talking about strictly classic Scooby, like pre-1990 kind of thing. Because yes, it very much changed. Like even the dynamic of the whole group, I feel like really changed after, you know, we got into like the 2000s and things like that, where they were squabbling and stuff. Whereas in the classic series, like it just wasn't really a thing. But I think this is another instance of that where, oh my goodness, my mind just went completely blank, completely like blue screen of death in the Windows program in my head now, completely. Oh my gosh. That is embarrassing. Wow. This is what happens when you talk too much. Is that you get to a point where it's like there's no memory left and it crashes your computer. I don't think what I like about, especially in the classic series, is that each gang member is very, very different. But because they're differences, I feel like we didn't dwell on them. They didn't dwell on them in amongst themselves. Other than, you know, danger prone Daphne, and they did make some jokes at her expense for sure, even in the classic series. But other than that, like I feel like they didn't spend a lot of time pointing out Velma's book smarts or, you know, whatever everybody's attributes were. And yet they were displayed in a kind of an obvious manner. And I think that was a really great way of doing it because, like we talked about in a previous panel, Scooby is very inclusive because of the genericness of everything. There are a lot of specifics in it, but even the specifics are somehow generic. So because we're not spending a lot of time saying, well, you're good at this, so you go do that. And you're good at that, so you go over there and do this. They just do it. They all kind of have their own role, and as they're going along, they're doing what they're good at. And I think that that's a great way to teach kids that, yeah, you can see that they're different, but they're not thinking about their differences. They're just living their life and they're getting along really, really well. And they're doing what they're doing really well too, because they're working together. And because they're not criticizing each other, and they do praise each other though. Somebody does a good job or something, somebody notices something that the others didn't notice. In the classic series, you do find times where they're like, wow, great job. You know, I'm glad that you saw that. I'm glad that you noticed that. And I think that's a good way for kids to learn. Like, differences don't really matter, and everyone has a strength, and we don't need to point out where people are lacking because we don't like it when, like, we wouldn't appreciate someone pointing out where we're lacking, you know? Mm-hmm. And so just them going out and doing what they do and being who they are, and we don't have to talk about it, I think normalizes it. It goes a long way to make it just normal everyday life for kids, which I think is super important, because I have heard it said before as like a saying, and I completely agree with it. Like, there's nothing crueler than children. They can be very, 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 very mean. They don't have any filter. And So you think, I mean, I don't really know what Scooby's target demographic originally was in 1969 because it has such a broad appeal age-wise, like all the way along. So I don't really know when they sat down and said, okay, we're going to make this show. Like, are we making it for 6 to 8 year olds, or are we making it for 10 to 12 year olds, you know? Or are we making it just for everybody that wants to watch it? I don't know what the target was, but I think that they did it in such a great way that it is applicable to everyone, and it does kind of tamp down that you're different than me, I don't like it. I'm better than you. You're better than me, therefore I don't like you. You know, like, can you imagine, like Nikki said, Cameron, you have this amazing collection. How awful would it be if any of us were sitting here and we're like, you have a better collection than me, so I don't like you anymore. But that's what kids like to do. And that's like, no. You want to grow out of that really, really fast. And I think Scooby is a great tool for any age, for children to see that you don't have to behave like that, because that's not conducive to anything good. You are hurting other people and you're hurting yourself, because like, we're friends. All of us are friends. We don't hate each other. You know what I mean? We don't have to be jealous of each other. We can be happy for each other. Somebody gets something new. That's awesome. You know, I didn't know that that existed. Now I want one. I don't want yours. I want you to have yours, but now I want one too, you know? And that's such a better, it fosters positive things instead of negative things. And I think children, more so than anybody, they need that reinforcement of the positive, because I do feel like oftentimes they gravitate to the negative because they haven't learned enough yet in life. They just haven't. It's not their fault. It just is what it is. We all go through it, and we all hopefully will learn it. Some people don't. And when you get adults that aren't very nice to be around, but yeah, we don't all have to be the same, but in our differences, we can come together and make something that's beautiful, whether it's the Scooby Gang solving the mystery and helping the person that needed help, or if it's just having a Saturday night conversation that everybody's enjoying, you know, it just works out good like that.
Bradford, what are your thoughts?
I think one of the best things that Scooby-Doo teaches in terms of, you know, talents and skills and stuff is that a talent doesn't necessarily have to be like you're really smart, or you could like build a trap really well. Like Shaggy and Scooby are very cautious, and being cautious is a really good skill to have on the show, because they're not going to just, you know, let the gang go running into something that's going to be trouble. Like they're a little more hesitant to do stuff, and that's a good skill to have. It's a good talent to have. And I think, especially for me, like when I was a kid, I didn't feel like, you know, I didn't feel like the smartest kid in class, or like I was super handy or anything like that. So it was nice that it was showing me that there's more to people than just these kind of, you know, big showy talents that, you know, are easier for people to see. You know, the inner talents and stuff that you have are just as important and useful. When it comes to almost anything, you know, on Scooby, it's a mystery, but, you know, in real life, it could be, you know, who knows what. And I think, you know, Nikki, like you were saying with the fandom, I think that's a great part of all the fandoms too, is that just everybody's more than just that Scooby part that everybody sees. And because they have all those other talents and things behind it, it creates, you know, a very unique and different fan. Like everybody's very different, has their own little skills that they can bring and showcase through the fandom and through and using Scooby-Doo. And it just, you know, just makes everything all the more better. Yeah.
Derek, how about you?
This is actually the topic I was kind of excited to talk about, because I was actually comparing it in a way to my workplace. So I'm a graphic designer for work, and on our team, like my manager is always delegating certain projects to me and the other designers based on what our strengths are. So we have one senior designer who is an amazing illustrator. He went to school for it. He's just phenomenal at it. I'm not as strong as that, so like I don't get as many of those projects. I'm more so reserved for like layout and stuff like that, which are more so my strengths. So I think that with the gang, kind of like with what Wendy said, like they're very generic like subcategories of what they could be in terms of their personalities and what they bring to the group. But I think like, you know, Fred being the leader, he knows he is the leader, and he's obviously a good leader because he directs the gang really well. He knows that Velma is good at analyzing certain things and coming up with like a logical conclusion to stuff. I'm glad that in recent years they've made Daphne a lot more of a interesting character and useful character in the story with her talents that they've given her over the years, whether it be her being able to use makeup or something to get out of a trap, or even like in Be Cool Scooby-Doo when she has her episodic interests, and that just is something that sometimes plays a part in the mystery itself. It's always just fun to see Shaggy and Scooby, you know, contrary to a lot of people's belief, like they're not stupid. Like they can be objective at times when they're, you know, looking around, and they're like, yeah, they may take a moment to stop eating their hamburgers and they're going to see something, and they're not going to be like not thinking about the mystery overall. And when we go back to the idea of like the fandom, the Scooby fandom, and how everybody has like their own really great talents, things that they bring to the fandom overall, I love seeing all of it. And ever since I started Do Central on Tumblr, I didn't really like, before I started Do Central, I kind of had it in my head like I was one of the few big Scooby fans in the world. I didn't know any other fans at all. And then now there's so many, and I'm friends with a bunch of them now. And it's so great to see people specialize in how they do things in their own way for, you know, how they love Scooby. And even when Shannon and I started That Groovy Scoopcast, I listened to other Scooby-Doo podcasts, and I'm like, okay, I would really like to start one, but I don't want to just copy what everybody else is doing. You know, I want to bring something new to the table and specialize something. That's why we did our trivia on our podcast, because I didn't hear trivia on other podcasts. I'm like, yeah, that could be cool, because then people can actually learn really interesting facts about the cartoon that they probably didn't know. And then we try to keep up on the news, but like the Scooby-Doo news Twitter, Instagram page, like I feel like they just know everything before it even becomes, you know, public knowledge. I never keep up on any of that stuff. I don't find out until anybody else does. I'm always behind on news. But yeah, when it comes to just everybody's talents, it's just great to see how everybody can use what they bring to the table to make the whole picture better.
Cameron?
You know, I think of Mystery Incorporated as a Swiss Army knife. They're so, you know, it's just they've all have their abilities and they're all different. One thing I love about Scooby-Doo, and I've loved ever since I was a kid, is that the show was always so fresh to me. And what I mean by that is that growing up, I always saw, and I hate this so much, but I always saw in schools how there was always the different tables at lunch. There was, you know, the nerds, the less popular kids, the pretty, you know, people, like, I don't know, like, you know, the people that, you know, were always so popular, than the jocks. And, you know, I mean, everybody always had those groups in high school. And I never felt like that with Mystery Incorporated. I never felt like one was, you know, taken out of the group. I felt like they all worked together so well. You know, I felt like, you know, Daphne, she probably would have been one of the more popular ones in school. I felt like Velma was a little bit more on the nerdy side. I felt like Fred, and I wouldn't say he's so much a jock, but, you know, maybe he had some of those attributes. He was more of a leader, you know, more of an all-around guy. Shaggy was probably, you know, more of the, you know, standout guy, and, you know, Scooby was Scooby. But, you know, I think it's cool, and it kind of teaches us in life that, you know, everybody's different. And I've heard Wendy say this on previous panels, and I agree with it 110%. It's, if we lived in a world where everybody was the same, it'd be very boring, you know? And so when you got the Scooby Gang, you got different personalities. And it's like when kids grow up with a cartoon of Scooby-Doo, or when you turn it on, you can kind of connect with one member of the gang. Me personally, I feel like I connect most with Fred. You know, he's that leader. He always likes to take charge. He likes to help people. You know, I feel like that's me in sometimes in instances. When I was growing up, when I was in school, I never really, I feel like, and maybe I'm kind of jumping ahead to another topic and I don't mean to, but I feel like Scooby-Doo helped me in a certain way of like my character, of a sense of like when I was growing up and when I was going to school, I wasn't at one table. I was always, around different lunch tables, talking to everybody. To me, everybody was the same. I didn't look at, if they were poor, rich, fat, ugly. I mean, I never judged anybody. I never, I felt like I was a friend to everybody. And I feel like that's how Scooby and the gang are, that they never look at somebody. And another thing too is, and I'm like, so I'm not trying to jump topics, but you look at the Scooby-Doo show and the Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? And all the Scooby-Doos that we've seen so far, and they never judge anybody on the cartoon. And you have different people from different walks of life on the cartoons. You know how people have, they illustrate them and stuff, and they never judge them. And I think that's really cool. And so I feel like there's inclusiveness in the cartoons, and I think that's really neat. But I feel like with each of the gang, they have their own different personalities. They mesh well together. They make Mystery Incorporated, unique because, like I said, I've never really seen another cartoon where there's so many different personalities and they mesh well together as much as Scooby-Doo with Mystery Incorporated. So that's where I stand on it.
Yeah, and I think it's really good too that they did take all of these characters that are so different that normally would not hang out together, and they put them together and they made it work.
Agreed.
They're best friends, all of them.
Yeah.
And they work so well together.
Yeah. So
our next topic is friends are important and they're there when you need them. Well, I mean, Shaggy and Scooby, the two of them are like best friends. So one of the things that bugged me was in Scoob, they kind of tried to break them apart. And that really drove me crazy because it's not how it should be. They kind of tried the same thing in Mystery Inc. too, when Velma and Shaggy were trying to be. And, Scooby kind of felt like the outcast. So I feel like those were kind of unnecessary to do because Shaggy and Scooby are such good friends. But Derek, what are your thoughts?
I have to agree. Funny enough, I actually just saw the Scoob movie today. I went to the movie theater and saw it. And yeah, I was thinking the exact same thing, that it bugs me that they were trying to like drive this wedge between the two, because it's also bringing back a prior topic we talked about, where I hate the conflict of the story sometimes just being Shaggy and Scooby trying to find their place in the group. Because yeah, Shaggy and Scooby are best friends, the two of them, but the five of them are a collective just group of best friends. And I just felt it was so out of character at times where that scene where Simon Cowell is like, yeah, I'm only investing in the group if you kick those two out. And like Shaggy and Scooby go to leave, and Daphne, Velma, and Fred don't really stop them from leaving. That was I feel like a very out of character moment for them. And what I do like though in Mystery Incorporated is, what I enjoy about the show in general is that I think it does a better job at portraying them as real teenagers. Because real teenage friends, like, yeah, no matter how close you are, you're gonna get in fights. Like everybody has fights with family members, friends, and yeah, the Velma, Shaggy, Scooby love triangle was kind of annoying, but it was also nice when Velma and Shaggy are having relationship issues, and then Daphne's having issues trying to get to Fred romantically, and then you're kind of seeing a side of Daphne and Velma being, friends and trying to talk their issues out with each other in ways that you don't really feel like you see in other renditions of the show. Like, yeah, they're the gal pals of the group, but I don't really feel like I see those deep conversations between the two elsewhere. But I think that like the moral of Mystery Incorporated in the end was like, yeah, the five of them together are strongest together as opposed to apart. Like, they all have their own personal issues, but they value their friendship. And when it comes to like my own personal life and applying it to my group of friends, like my closest friends, yeah, we don't always get along, but we value the friendship more than the day-to-day issues that we might have. Even Shannon and I, she's my best friend, she's my co-host on the podcast, and there's days where like I'm just not in the mood to talk to her because we're upset about each other for something, but like we still come together and we're still best friends through it all, no matter what. And that's what I do value with, that's what I like about Shaggy and Scooby as like a model in terms of best friends, because for the most part, they don't oftentimes have fights, the two of them. It's very rare you see that throughout the 50 plus years now of the series where the two of them are having an issue where like they're not even on speaking terms. It's very rare. And I think that demonstrates and reinforces their friendship overall to fans.
Cameron?
You know, when you bring up the topic, you know, friends are there and they're there when you need them. I feel like certain friends are, you know, and I feel like when you watch Scooby-Doo, it's the people that are close to them are the people that have always helped them, and the people that, you know, they want close to them. You know, the five of them are super close, but you know, you go throughout the series and stuff, and they have other close friends like Flim Flam or Vincent Van Ghoul or the Hex Girls, and you know, those are people that they do trust and they count on as well to help them out. And I love that. I thought that was always so cool. I'm a person that, you know, using a little bit of personal stuff, you know, I'm a person that doesn't have a lot of friends per se. And it's not that I have a lot of acquaintances, but what I consider a friend is someone that's going to be there for me through thick and thin. Have somebody I can call, like Wendy said, somebody I can call at 4 o'clock in the morning and they'll be there to, you know, get me if I'm you know, out in the middle of the desert, I don't know. But that's what I consider a friend, someone to be there for me. And I feel like Scooby-Doo teaches that well. You know, you see a lot of characters, you see a lot of people throughout the cartoons of Scooby-Doo. I mean, you there's been a lot of supporting characters going through in and out of many series, but they've always had those certain characters stick with them. You know what I mean? Like, you know, the five are always going to be together. You know, they're strong, and they're like they're built like the tank. You know what I mean? Each of them need each other to run. And you also see other characters come along the way that help them and that are very close to them. But I love how Scooby-Doo has taught us that, you know, you do need friends to get through things, and it's okay to ask for help. And I feel like in life that's also very hard, because I can, you know, like Wendy and like, you know, Derek and Bradford and like you, I mean, I get it. Sometimes it's easy to do stuff on your own when you're focused and stuff like that. But sometimes, you know, things get hard in life, and it's okay to ask a friend and a person that you trust in life to, you know, help you out from time to time. And I feel like that's where Scooby and the gang, like if they're in a jam or something's going wrong, or, you know, the gang's always there to lift each other up. One may be down, but the other four may be lifting them up. You know what I mean? And I've seen that for many of the cartoons, going from Where Are You all the way up until now, Guess Who? And I think that's very important. I feel like that teaches us a lesson that no matter what you do in life, you need to have somebody that you can trust. So,
yeah. Bradford?
So from a writing standpoint, I understand why sometimes they're like, you know, for conflict reasons, let's, you know, throw some trouble in with the friend group. But I think my biggest issue is that every time they do that, it seems like the issue between the friends is kind of like set aside from the rest of like the story on its own. Like if Shaggy and Scooby are having like a falling out, it doesn't feel like the rest of the gang is like trying to help at all, or like, you know, going over to them and be like, hey, you guys, like, is there, like, everything okay? It's like the Be Cool Scooby-Doo episode where Scooby was like looking for the crystal crawler one, where Scooby and Shaggy kind of break up, and Scooby's going around trying to replace Shaggy with somebody else. In a normal friend group, I wouldn't think that's something that, you know, would happen. The gang, I would assume, as Scooby went around to the other people, they'd be like, Scooby, come on, like, you know, we're all friends. You can't replace Shaggy with one of us. That's not how this works. We're a group. We all get along. So I think that's always my biggest issue whenever some type of, you know, divide happens between any of them, is that they should all be coming together to fix that divide. It shouldn't just be, you know, whoever the two are that are having an issue together are the only two trying to fix the problem. Because like Wendy was saying earlier, like in early episodes and stuff, Shaggy and Scooby maybe didn't get along with everybody else and they were going to leave, but they always stop and they're like, you know, we go back because everybody, you know, we're all friends, we're a group. So I think the show usually does a good job you know, of showing that everybody's always there for each other. But it's in those instances, like Derek was mentioning, where they're trying to make conflict and split the group up, that they don't always do a good job, I think, of showing, you know, how everybody does get along and should be working as a friend group.
Wendy?
Yeah, the Scooby Gang, I mean, they are the ultimate group of friends. All accepting, all loving, and they work together great. And maybe that is like a very idealistic way of looking at it, but what's wrong with that? People today, they're so obsessed with like, oh no, we have to make it realistic. And I'm like, well, but that could be realistic. You know, just because it's not in today's day in life doesn't mean that it can't be, and doesn't mean that it shouldn't be. My best friend, Crystal, we have been best friends since we were 7 years old. And there is absolutely nothing that I wouldn't do for her. Nothing. There's a verse in the Bible that says, greater love has no man than this, that he lay down his life for his friends. And so going back to what I said earlier about the idea of friends versus acquaintances, and like what makes someone a friend, as opposed to just someone that you like, that you hang out with sometimes, that you talk to, and like you care about them, of course. But for me, it does have to go a little bit beyond just, oh, we like the same things, we like to hang out, you know, like I love my friend, you know, I love her. I would give my life for her. I would take a bullet for her. I would push her out of the way of a train. You know what I mean? And that's not just me saying that. Like I mean that. And she's probably the only person on this planet other than my dad that I would say that about, you know? And that is something, going back to what my grandpa said, you can count your friends on one hand after 100 years. You are very fortunate, because true friends are very hard to come by. We can have a lot of friends that we love them in a different way, you know, maybe we wouldn't take it to the extreme for them, but that doesn't negate the care that we do have for them and the love that we have for them. But I feel like there are very, very few people that come into anybody's life that are that like close, that you have that connection with, where it's like there isn't anything that you could go through that would destroy it. You know, I have had friends that I thought, we are going to be friends forever. This is never going to stop. And it's not that we had a falling out or anything like that. It's just that life happened and people go away to school and people start their own life. And like I say, there was never a bad word said, but we're not friends anymore. Like I would say that we're not friends anymore. That like, please don't call me at 4 a.m. because you need help. Like if you do, I'll come and help you. But I would do that for a lot of people that are not my friends either. You know what I mean? If somebody asks me, like it is just a good practice to, like, if somebody asks you for help, go and help them. That's it. That's all. You know, it doesn't have to be your friend to go and help somebody. You should be willing to help like pretty much anybody, like within reason, but you know what I mean? So I think Scooby's gang is very much an idealized version of it, but I think that's good for kids to see and for adults to see too, because friendships like what I have with Crystal, those are real and they might be hard to come by, but when you find them, you do whatever it takes to keep them. Because whatever you put effort into in life, the more effort you put in, the more you're going to get out. If you don't put any effort in, you know, you plant a garden, you put the seeds in the ground. If you just leave them there and you don't water them, they're going to die. You're not going to get a plant. You're not going to get pretty flowers. You're not going to get any fruit or vegetables. They're going to die. There is effort required, you know. Since last year when life went to crap, Crystal and we have had a weekly video call every single week, with the exception of maybe 2 or 3 times where one of us had something that we couldn't put off doing. And that has just, I mean, I haven't seen her in person, but this is like, it's something that we look forward to and we get along. We're not the same, You know, there's a lot of things that we're very similar, but we're very different too. It's not like, oh, she's just a carbon copy of me, so of course I enjoy being around her. Like, no, there's things about us that are very, very different. But, you know, it's not about that. You know, she is my friend, and like the Scooby Gang, could you have that in real life with like 4 other people? Maybe you could. I don't know. I mean, awesome. If you can, you better be putting effort into keeping that, you know, because that's amazing. But it's not unrealistic. I get so tired of people that point at stuff like that, where it's just like there's so much positivity that they're like, well, that's unrealistic. Don't show me that. Don't tell kids that, because that's not real. Well, it's not real if you don't want it to be real. But if you put in enough effort, you know, and you pay attention in life, you can have some really, really great things happen, you know. And I think Scooby is a good like gateway to showing people that this can be a reality. You know, we don't have to always be at odds with people. Do I have disagreements with my friends? Sometimes. You know, I'm not going to say never, but it is super duper rare, and you get over it really fast, you know, because you realize like this is not worth even 5 seconds of bitterness or anger or whatever it might be, you know. And so many times in life, how many fights are started over like a misunderstanding? Somebody says something and you take it a certain way, and because you're mad, you're like, well, I'm just not going to talk about it. And then when you finally get over that and you say something and they're like, wow, that's not what I meant at all. I get that you took it like that, and I'm sorry that you did. That wasn't what I meant. And you're like, wow, that all that time, like even if it's only 10 minutes, it doesn't matter. That's 10 minutes of your life that you can't get back, that was filled with negativity for a person that you love. And it's not necessary, you know? And I think that if we all look at the possibility of having real friends the way that the Scooby Gang are friends, then you'd be more likely to find it, and you'll be a better friend to your friends when you watch how the Scooby Gang interact with each other, because you can emulate all of, you know, that's again what I like about the classic series is we're not seeing any negative traits in any of them. Yes, every person on the planet has negative traits. But when we're watching Scooby, do we really, we know that. Don't show it to me. I don't need to see it. I know that that's reality. Show me the positive. Let's see this like perfect little friendship so that we have something to aspire to. You know, I feel like people, they've gotten so lazy. They don't want to work at anything, and they just want to say, oh, I can't have this, and that's not real, and we can't. No. Yes, maybe you're not always going to get what you want, but goodness sakes, like it doesn't hurt to try. And if you try, you might actually find that you get something really amazing out of it. And you can have friends that will do anything for you and that are with you all the time and that you want to be with all the time, go and solve mysteries with, or whatever, you know, whatever is your thing. Like it can be a reality. And I love that Scooby shows us that. And for that reason, I see merit in like the newer series and stuff, but I don't want to see the negativity. I know it's realistic. I don't want it. I see reality every day and I'm like, keep reality. I know what reality is, but give me some optimism. And Scooby-Doo, classic Scooby, is like, to me, the epitome of optimism, because they always come out on top no matter what. It doesn't matter how hard the struggle was. They are in it for the long haul together, all of them, and together they all come out on top no matter what. And I think that's a good goal for everyone to have in life. Maybe it won't work out that way, but you don't know unless you try. So what have you got to lose?
Right. So our next life lesson is one that Wendy brought up. Truly caring about or showing love to others means you're willing to sacrifice something of yourself in order to help them. So Wendy, since this was your topic, we'll let you go first.
think about every single episode of classic Scooby-Doo. The gang are out at the beach. They're at a school dance. They're walking home from a movie with a pizza, and they see something. Someone's in trouble. Something isn't right. And what do? Whatever they were doing, they stop and they go to help. That requires sacrifice on their part. They're sacrificing their time. They're sacrificing their safety. I mean, I'm surprised that Scooby-Doo, given a lot of the stuff that people complain about, I'm surprised that more people don't complain about how dangerous some of those situations that the gang found themselves in would be in reality. Because a lot of it was dangerous. And they put themselves at risk for the sake of other people. There's no getting around that. Anytime that they wanted to help somebody, which is the point of every single mystery that they ever solved in the classic series, somebody needs help. And they go help them. They're giving of themselves. They're not asking somebody else to go and do it. You know, they're not going to the police station and saying, hey, there's this weird thing, go check it out. They're saying, hey, maybe we can help. So let's stop what we're doing, give of ourselves for someone else's good. And I think that is a really important lesson that everyone could benefit from and apply it to every single walk of life, that nothing comes for free. And it's not a sacrifice if you're not the one doing it. If Nikki needs help and I say, oh, Nikki, Cam will come over and help you move stuff into your Scooby room, which obviously Cam would do that. I would run to do that if I could, if we lived closer. I mean, we'd all be over there trying to load up the Scooby room. But you know what I mean? Me volunteering Cameron to help Nikki, I'm not sacrificing anything except for Cameron. And that's not how that's supposed to work. Sacrifices of yourself. You, Nikki, you need help. I will come and help you. That is me sacrificing of myself for you, you know? And the Scooby Gang, they never ask other people to do it. They are willing to do it themselves. And regardless of whether it's dangerous or not, regardless of whether they have better things to do with their time, you know, they are meant to be teenagers. They want to go have fun. But these teenagers want to go help people. And they're willing to stop having fun in order to go and do it. And I think that is what has always made Scooby-Doo, like, I think that is like the most special aspect of it for me when I was growing up, was seeing that and being like, wow, because you can see, like, you can watch news footage online where people will stand and watch while someone gets beat to death on the street. Or people will stand and watch while a girl gets raped. And I think, how do you do that? How do you just stand there and watch when someone needs help? I don't know. I don't know how people do that. And so to see on Scooby-Doo, obviously it's on like a bit of a lesser level, but the lesson is still the same. Sacrifice of yourself to help others. In order to help somebody, it does require you to sacrifice something, whether it's something that's small or big. That literally is what you're doing. And that's a good thing. That's a good quality to have. That's not a negative to your character. That is a very positive thing. And Scooby-Doo did a great job of like reinforcing that like, look at what they're doing. Yes, are they enjoying the mystery? Probably, you know, but I don't think that the gang enjoys it when they get tied up and tossed in a hole. But that's not fun. They're not having fun in that moment, you know?
Yeah.
Just
That's not fun. Exactly. You know? So it's not all fun for them. Like, I'm sure some people would argue like, well, they're having fun. They're solving the mystery. Well, maybe in the long run, yes, but there are moments before they get to that end goalpost where it's like, it's not so much fun. It's not so much fun at all. And I I think that's a really good lesson for everyone, regardless of their age. And that is what endears Scooby-Doo to me the most.
Bradford?
Some of my favorite episodes when I was a kid were always the ones where they stumbled across the mystery. And I think a big part of that is because it demonstrated how you could use something you were good at to help another person.
Mhm.
So, you know, helping another person didn't always mean doing something you didn't really want to do. You could do something you like doing and also help somebody at the same time. And that really resonated with me as a kid, because I remember plenty of times as a kid where if I saw a situation where I could help somebody, I usually went ahead and did it, you know, because most of the time as a kid, normally it's not something that's too difficult, you know, like it was helping somebody on a playground or something like that. It was never like a hard thing to do. And I never understood people who wouldn't do stuff like that. I mean, it's not asking too much of you. And I think it was probably from Scooby-Doo, because I mean, I watched that from before I went to school till, you know, today. I'm still watching. So I don't think I knew that that's what it was teaching me, but I think that's a message that comes across pretty clear, is that, you know, it's not a bad thing to go out of your way a little bit to help somebody. It's not going to kill you. You're going to, you know, you're going to feel good about it. And the best part is, I think with Scooby-Doo especially, is that they never, at the end of the episode, they're not sticking around trying to get credit for it. They're not like looking for the newspaper to come and take their picture and be like, look, we solved this mystery. They're doing it to be good. They're good Samaritans. They're just trying to, you know, do the right thing. And it's a really great message from the show. Yeah, I really don't think I knew it was teaching me that, but I definitely feel like that's probably where I learned all that stuff.
And you bring up a good point. They didn't look for the news to come and say, oh, you did a great job. Where you see, I know for me, I see a lot of people on social media, they do something good and the first thing they have to do is post it on Facebook or Twitter. And to me, it kind of downgrades that, you know, you did something good for somebody else, but you're looking for the credit for it. So to me, I feel like they're just doing it more so to get recognized that they did something good. Cameron, what are your thoughts?
You know, when Wendy brought this topic up, I really loved this, and I kind of had to think about it for a little bit, but it's so true. When you watch Scooby-Doo, they have such good hearts. They have good characters. They're wanting to help everybody. You see them when they're driving down the road, they're talking, they're having fun, and they look over and somebody's in trouble, or somebody needs help, or somebody's shop's about to get closed down because a monster's trying to ruin it, or, you know, whatever the situation may be. One aspect I looked about Scooby-Doo was you never know what the character of the show, the person that was in trouble, what their background life was like. And it kind of betrays to what in real life. My parents always taught me, you never know what somebody's going through at their home life. They could be getting beat. They could be never get a hug and told they're loved. So when I was going through school, you know, when kids are ever getting bullied, I always stepped in and I always, you know, said, hey, we're not going to do that. I always, and I'm not trying to say, oh, Cameron, you're a good guy. You know, you're helping people. I don't mean it at all. But I just mean as, you know, sometimes in life you have to stand up. I mean, was I a little nerve wracked? Was I going up against people that were bigger and stronger than me? Heck yeah. You know, but when you have a good heart, like the Mystery Inc. gang do, it makes you want to go out in the world and do good. And, you know, there's so much negativity in the world now that I agree with Wendy. I agree with all of you. Scooby-Doo is such a positive cartoon. It's such a good-hearted cartoon. And you'll hear me, and I sound like a broken record all the time, when I talk about not incorporating all these negative and evil things in the Scooby-Doo. I'm a person that wants to keep it clean because, you know, we're watching it, and yes, we enjoy it. We're adults, but kids are watching it. Like my little nephew, he started watching it. I'm so proud of him for watching Scooby-Doo, but I love how he's watching it and it's clean. My sister monitors everything he watches and she knows Scooby-Doo's clean. It's a clean cartoon that teaches kids we all need to love each other. We all need to get along. You know, life's full of negative things, but they don't include that in Scooby-Doo. They show what the problem is and they move on past there. They show how the gang is willing to help one another, or willing to help the person that, you know, that's in trouble. And Bradford, you bring up such a great point, and I'm serious. You look at some of these you know, these cartoons and movies. My favorite one is or my favorite example is Frank and Creepy. At the very end, Velma inherited that castle and all the oil rights and stuff like that. Well, she gives it back to the people of the village that are you know, kind of suffering in a sense. And she doesn't look for, you know, a credit. She just gives it to them, and they all go get the mystery machine and go away. And I'm thinking to myself, that's awesome. You know, has there been moments in my life where I've done something and you know, I've never gotten credit or never, yeah. But you know, my parents also taught me too, sometimes in life, you're going to do something and you don't have to always get the credit. You know what I mean? You kind of go from behind. It's kind of like that saying, from behind the curtain, behind the stage. You know, those people that are always doing, they're the ones that make the show sometimes, because of what they kind of make the backbone. You know, so sometimes in life you're going to do something that you're going to have to sacrifice. Sometimes you're going to, I mean, and we're human. Sometimes do we want to get praised on things? Yeah, we want to get praised on things. Do we always need to get praised on things? No. You know, going throughout life, you know, there was things I've done I haven't been praised on. And as a younger age, you know, I was like, man, you know, that stinks. But then my parents had to sit me down and tell me, hey, look, sometimes you're going to go throughout life, son, and you're not always going to get the praise and recognition. But think of that person you helped. Think about them going home and that you making them feel special, like they're wanted in this world, because they may go home and they may get told that they're worth nothing. You know, they may go home and they may be starving. I mean, so how I'm all connecting this is that, yes, in life, you're going to have to sacrifice things. And I felt like Scooby and the gang, do they have to sacrifice things? Yeah, sure. But they have such good hearts that they're wanting to help one another. They're not looking for the recognition. And like I said, it's just such positivity. It's such cleanness. It's such lovingness, I should say, that it just flows so well throughout the cartoons, even the movies, that, you know, it just goes in the sense of helping one another. You know what I mean? When I watch other cartoons, I mean, Scooby-Doo takes all these little things and compacts it into one cartoon, like 30 minutes. And you think to yourself, I've learned so much within these 30 minutes. Whereas I watch another cartoon, and I think that's what bugs me, honestly, is like, you know, there's so many new cartoons nowadays. And I'm sorry, but they're such stupid cartoons. They really are. Like, it's like I'm like, you're not teaching kids anything except, you know, like somebody gets hit over the head and they're like, oh, it's so funny. And, and I'm just like, you know, are we not putting life lessons into cartoons to teach kids how to behave and how, because I felt like Scooby-Doo shaped me and helped me develop who I am as a character, in my character and going throughout life. And like I said, jumping topics now, but I mean, that's where I feel is that, yes, they sacrificed things in life. Yes, I think they have, but I think it honestly, in the very end, you know, they're happy about it. They're happy that they did it, because it's just who they are. They're good people. They're 4 kids with a dog traveling around, and they got good hearts. And I just think that that's so amazing to resonate with people. I think that's where people connect the most, is where with the gang, because they have such a good heart and they're wanting to change the world. They're wanting to help people. But like I said, do they need the recognition? No, they don't need the recognition.
Derek, what are your thoughts?
Well, I do know that the gang does love sometimes seeing their name in the paper, but it's not because they do it just for that sake. But I love it, like when I see them all around the mall shop, because they're really happy that they did something good. That's usually what they're saying in the story. It's not because they want the congrats. But I definitely agree with all of you. I think that even without realizing it, the show through the years has shaped me as a person to where I do feel that helping people, even if it's inconveniencing me, the goodness that comes out of that situation outweighs whatever that inconvenience may be. Usually an example I'm thinking about, like recently, was just me driving some friends who drank a little too much home. I didn't get home until 4 a.m, but I'm going to bed that night thinking, wow, like I'm really happy that they got home safe. It's not, I'm going to bed at 4 a.m. It's, I'm glad that they're safe and they're not in a dangerous situation. And an episode I think that came to my mind when Wendy was talking about some of her points was a decoy for a dog napper from Where Are You, where, you know, Scooby kind of had that crush on that little girl dog, and then she gets dog napped and he's concerned about it, and they're talking to a bunch of like dog show owners, and they literally make Scooby the decoy. Like they set him and Shaggy up to be in a very dangerous situation where they don't know what's happening with these dogs. What if these dogs are, God forbid, being killed or something? Like, who knows? But they're doing it because they want to get to the bottom of what's happening, and they want to help the dog owners. They want to help the dogs. They're going so far as to give Scooby a fancy collar, and they're tracking him on the mystery machine. They're racing trains. They're seeing ghosts, and they're scared out of their wits, while trying to do this really good thing for all these people in their hometown. And I think there's a lot to be said about that kind of situation where, like, yeah, they're doing this good thing, but wow, they are in a very, very dangerous situation. And that happens a lot in the older series for sure. And it's nice to see that that's a constant thing throughout the franchise. I think just whenever you see in any series, they're always willing to put that, that help and that guidance out to other people. Shaggy and Scooby are definitely going to want to hop in the van, and they don't want anything to do with it, but they do ultimately have it good at heart, as they do want to help people. Shaggy will be like, yeah, I'm scared, but I need to step up to help other people. Scooby does that all the time. I love it when Scooby, in one instance, or in many different situations where, yeah, he's scared, but he's putting on the brave dog facade, and he's barking and growling at people because he's trying to help the situation overall. And like I said, I think Decoy for a Dog Napper is a really good example of that, where they're putting themselves on the line in a very dire situation to help other people, not knowing what the consequences really could be. And there's a lot of value in that in terms of people in everyday life. Like I said, I don't really think I knew that growing up when I was watching the show, but I like to think that that is a contributor, because that is something that I think everyone needs more of in their life, either giving or hopefully receiving from other people, is that help and that goodwill from other people.
That's a good segue into our next life lesson, which is it's okay to be afraid and it's good to face your fears. So like you said, Shaggy and Scooby are always scared. They run, they hide in the mystery machine, but ultimately they do come out and they help to look for clues. And, they even interact with the villain a lot of times because they're cooking something and they're acting like waiters, or, they're dressing up in some other type of costume and interacting with them. So, of course, if all they did was sit in the mystery machine shaking, it would be pretty boring. But so what are your thoughts on being afraid but facing your fears? Bradford?
Well, it's a big part of the show for me, because when I was little, I was afraid of like everything. There was a lot of stuff I wouldn't watch because it just scared me. I was the kid that like slept like with the blanket over my head at night because I was just scared. Like it was dark, who knows what was out there. So I did always think it was kind of weird that I liked Scooby-Doo so much, because it is kind of, supposed to be a little bit of a scary show. But I think, Shaggy and Scooby are probably the characters that made it feel the most okay to be afraid. Like they were scared. They knew they were scared. They accepted it. They didn't try to hide the fact that they were scared. And I think that helped, like make me feel a lot better about the fact that I was scared of stuff. It was like, it's not necessarily childish. These, they're teenagers or whatever. So it made me feel a little bit better about being scared. And I think also the fact that, once the end of the episode comes along, the thing that everybody's scared of turns out to not really be all that scary anyways. Like it's just somebody in a mask. So I think that helped a lot with making me feel like, maybe these things I'm scared of aren't, necessarily these terrifying things. And I kind of feel like that's something Scooby probably teaches a lot of kids, because that's such a big focus of the show is, scary stuff, but it's always not. It's like just trying to help you get over your fears, and like, yeah,
Cameron?
You know, when I was growing up, my mom and dad always told me, be careful what you put in your mind because it's hard to take out. And my parents were always very strict on what I could watch as a kid. I mean, I could watch anything Scooby-Doo, but you know, if I ever did see something scary or something did kind of frighten me, you know, I had to understand that it wasn't real and I had to get over it. And, you know, it's things that, you know, you have to face fears in life. And sometimes it's not just, oh, the boogeyman in your closet, or it's not just, you know, those little silly things. Sometimes fear is, you know, it could be an illness in your family. It could be death. It could be, you know, other things that are actually in the real world, you know, that are very fearful. But I feel like going throughout life being scared of everything, it's hard, you know. And so when you stop and you have to realize, you know, like I said, what's real and what's fake in life. Sometimes things are real and there's very are scary. I feel like Scooby-Doo does teach us that, you know, if they were scared of everything, you know, and they ran away from everything and they didn't even solve the mystery, then the people who were being affected by that monster would still be getting hurt or they would be in danger. But the gang faced their fears, mainly Shaggy and Scooby, because, you know, they were always big scaredy cats, but they faced their fears and they overcame it. And at the very end, they were always given the facts to the police officer, telling them what was going on. Where you know, throughout the episodes where they're kind of a little nervous and stuff. I mean, yeah, I mean, like you take for example, Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Werewolf. I love that episode because a lot of the times the gang is scared. It's a freaky looking werewolf coming after them, but they always come back and they're always stronger in the end because they're like, hey, we got to come over this fear. We got to solve this mystery. This werewolf, he's, you know, forget what it was, sending sheep down the river, and we got to stop this. So, you know, they overcame their fear and they solved the mystery. And I feel like in life, it's not so much as us solving a mystery, but it's kind of in the same aspect of, you know, there's a problem. Are we going to run away from it in life? No, we got to stand up to it and we got to overcome it. You know, I'm a very religious person. I've always, when something's got hard to me, I've always prayed. I've always surrounded myself with good people that it could help me when I get fearful of those things, you know? And so I feel like, you know, Scooby-Doo teaches us that well, you know, when things get hard, you know, do you run away? No, you stand up for what's right. And I think that's how Scooby-Doo has resonated, how to get over our fears. So.
Derek, how about you?
When I think about things that like scare me personally, I like to think that I don't always have the like runaway approach necessarily. There are some things where I will want to hide under the covers and not have to face it. You know, like I'm terrified of heights. But all my friends like wanted to go to Cedar Point and like I had to overcome it for the day. But I think when there are more serious things in life that are inducing fear or dread, I think there's a lot of value in being able to handle that in a way where, like, despite your fear, despite how it's adversely affecting you, being able to face that head on and overcome it, I think is something that we all need to be able to have in our, you know, our own lives, because otherwise we're just going to be having to deal with it, you know, coming out and not being able to handle anything that becomes an obstacle in our lives. I think I do take a little bit more of like a logistical approach to that kind of stuff. You know, I mean, I'm personally not religious, but I more so try to think of like, I guess I try to be like Velma, where like I'm trying to figure this out and like make this make sense in my head, and then I go and do it. So like with the heights thing, like I'm only going to be up in the sky for maybe a minute, and then I'll be back on the ground and I can kiss the cement. Or like if my mom hears a sound in the house and like here I am being scared, I'm like, you know, it's probably just the cat. I'm gonna go and look anyway. I don't want to, but it's probably just the cat knocking over something in the basement. I think I try to take that initiative, because otherwise you're just gonna be hiding in the mystery machine and not getting any kind of advancement in your life. And however people are going to approach their fear, I'm glad that they do it, and I'm glad that they're able to overcome it however they need to do that. There's a lot of I think that's a really big thing that comes out of Scooby-Doo that I think a lot of people should apply to their lives.
Yeah, one of the things for me that scared me to death was doing these panels. And it's been an idea that I've had for a really long time, but I never really showed my face on my page. There were a few pictures, but not a lot. And I'm not good at public speaking or, you know, speaking in crowds or any of that. So it really scared me to do these. And then I did a live interview with somebody and I just said, well, now I showed my face. So now I just need to figure out how to get over that hurdle of being afraid to talk to people and, you know, talking to people that I don't know very well. I mean, you know, we talk on social media, but I don't talk to you guys like face to face. So it's a whole different ballgame. But it was something that I really wanted to do. And I figured now was a good time to do it. You know, people are more interested in Scooby-Doo. There's more pages out there. There's, you know, fan art, there's fan fiction, there's all kinds of stuff going on. And I figured now was just a good time to do it. So I still get nervous before every single recording that we do. But once we start talking, it gets so much easier.
Yeah, you know, to kind of bounce off of that, I remember if I've ever listened to like one of the early episodes on mine and Shannon's podcast, I can just tell how stiff we are because of how nervous we are putting ourselves out there like that. Like, I personally hate the sound of my own voice. I hate my voice on audio, but I think Shannon naturally just has an amazing radio voice. But I think over time we've really gotten over that and gotten into our groove, and it's become a lot more organic. And then Nikki, when it comes to you, like, you know, showing your face on stuff, like I've been following ScoobyAddicts since I was probably 10 years old. So that's 15 years I've been looking at your website. I don't even think I knew what you looked like until probably about a year or two ago.
Yeah, I very rarely posted pictures of myself just because I didn't think anyone really cared about me so much. Everybody comes to my page to see Scooby-Doo. So to me, that's what I was doing. And I think there was a picture of me with the mystery machine in the background that I posted a few years ago. And when I met Scott Innes, I put the pictures up of that. But other than that, there was nothing else of me. So Wendy, what are your thoughts?
I think that people lose sight of the fact that fear is a good thing. We feel fear for a reason because fear shows us you need to be careful. The problem comes when we let the fear paralyze us. But I feel like some people, you know, I don't actually know if this was just like a fad that was going around or if this was actually associated with something that was like an actual thing. But those stickers that people would start putting on their cars, you know, no fear. I don't know if that was actually in relation to like a franchise. I have no idea. But for a while in like the early 2000s, like when I was in high school and stuff, they were everywhere. Everyone had these no fear stickers and things. And I mean, I understand where people are coming from with that. And I'm a big wrestling fan. And I remember years ago, I think The Rock had a t-shirt out and it said something like, the only fear is fear itself. And again, I understand where people are coming from, but I do think that in the same way that we shouldn't let our fear paralyze us, I also think it's detrimental to teach people that you shouldn't be afraid at all. Because when you have no fear, that is when you get into trouble. And I hadn't thought about this until I was listening to everybody talk about this particular topic, but to talk about Scrappy for just a minute, what was it that made Scrappy different from Scooby and Shaggy? Wasn't afraid of anything. And who was the one, especially in like season 1 with Scrappy, where it was Lenny Weinrib who was voicing him. I feel like when Don Messick took over, they actually did change Scrappy's character a little bit as well. But back in those early episodes, Scrappy was just gung-ho. Who was the one who was constantly getting everyone into trouble because he had no fear? It was Scrappy. Shaggy and Scooby constantly running after him, grabbing him from this dangerous situation, and he's completely oblivious to what's going on. Well, if that doesn't show why having a little bit of fear is a good thing, I don't know what does. You know, fear makes you cautious, fear makes you pay attention, fear can be a warning that, you know, something around you right now, you need to pay closer attention to it. Sometimes it's nothing, you know, like Derek said, maybe that noise is just your cat or something like that, you know. But reality is, you know, to go back to the first couple of things we talked about, there are bad people in the world. And sometimes that noise that you hear is not just your cat. And if you had zero fear at all, you'd be like, it's fine, whatever, you know, and you don't do anything. And the next thing you know, there's an ice pick in the back of your head. I mean, that's very dramatic. I understand, but you know what I mean?
That's from watching too much true crime.
Probably. But you know, like it's good to be cautious, because this is a good thing in especially classic Scooby-Doo. I don't feel like we see a whole lot of like actual fear from Velma and Daphne and Freddy. But we get so much of it with Shaggy and Scooby that I think it's meant to be like a nice balance all the way around of how to channel the fear. Because one thing I've noticed with the gang is that they might be in dangerous situations and they might walk into them with their eyes wide open, being like, yeah, this is going to be dangerous and we're going to do it anyway. But they're always cautious. They don't go off, you know, half-cocked, like, well, we don't know what's in here, but we're just going to barge right in. You know, they are very like that great, where they're like, they each have their own particular walk in the classic one, you know, and they're like creeping through the haunted house. And I always love it when we get that scene of them in like a different episode, but they're essentially, it's the same, you know, shot of them doing their little walk. And you can see they're sneaking around, they're being careful, you know. And I think it's just like an unspoken rule that maybe we're not seeing that Fred and Daphne and Velma are afraid, but the fact that they're showing caution, is that not a showing that like they are aware that we should have just like a little bit of fear here? We should be careful, because we don't know what's going on. We don't know who is doing what. Is the ghost real? Is it just a guy? Doesn't matter. Either way, it can be dangerous. And Shaggy and Scooby do a great job of showing that even when you are afraid, if what you're doing is for a good reason. I actually, when I was painting this afternoon, I think I watched 6 episodes of the Scooby-Doo show. And I'm pretty sure it was a Highland Fling with a Monstrous thing, and they're going to Aggie's castle. And at one point before they get there, they're told that there's a ghost and everything, and or that it's, you know, something's going on. Shaggy doesn't want to go. And Velma says, Shaggy, you turn your back on a poor defenseless friend when she needs our help? And he doesn't answer. And she says, well, he says, well, I'm thinking about it. And she goes, what? No. Like, yeah, we have to go help her. And off they go, you know? So it's good to show kids that, you know what, it's okay to be afraid. And there are valid reasons to be afraid. But sometimes you do have to be like, no, you can't let the fear rule your life. You have to harness it and take the positives from it. Let it make you aware. Pay attention to what you're doing. You know, don't lose sight of the fact that this might be a dangerous situation. Take the good from the fear, and the rest of it, don't let it control you. You do what you have to do when you have to do it, but do it in the safest manner that you can. And the fear can actually help you achieve that. And I think that people maybe lose sight of that sometimes. They think of fear as just a negative thing. And I don't think it is. It serves a purpose too. It has a purpose in your life.
Well, calling back too to like when we were talking about everybody's skill set and their talents that they bring to the table. I think it was Bradford that said that sometimes a little bit understated with Scooby and Shaggy is their sense of caution. Like, I think it was Bradford that said that. And I think that just kind of echoes in what your point was, Wendy, here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it is something that I didn't really think about either when we came up with the topics, was that fear is a good thing to have, because if you're just going head first into everything, you're going to get yourself in trouble. Something's going to happen.
Crappy.
Our next life lesson is to make do with what you have. So with the gang, the way I relate that is, I mean, they don't go shopping to buy the stuff that they need. You know, you never see them in a store grabbing this and this for a trap or for anything else. You know, they basically just pull costumes out of their pockets and it's just all there. So I think that's really interesting that they did that, but it does teach you to make do with what you have. You know, you have resources around you, so use them. So Cameron, what are your thoughts on that?
You know, it's very funny. You know, when you do bring that up, you know, I think about Fred with his traps. You're right. He doesn't go out shopping. You know, or he'll just say, okay, there's a bunch of sticks and rope and a paint can. I can make something with this. And then they capture a monster. Or, you know, you think how Shaggy and Scooby, you know, when they run into a building and the monster comes in, they're dressed up like, you know, hairstylists, and they're like, oh dear, sit down. You know what I mean? And just like, where did they get those costumes from? I think, you know, it kind of portrays in a way like, make do with what you have. Sometimes in life, you're not always going to have the things you want, but you have some things in front of you and that you should be grateful for. And, you know, I think that it kind of goes along with the lesson of, you know, sometimes we want things, but sometimes we got to stop and look what's in front of us and look at the good things we do have with us. And I think it's also cool with the Mystery Inc. gang, you know, they're not very greedy people, you know, and you know, they're going throughout different cartoons and stuff like that, and they're like, oh, you know, I didn't go get this, or I didn't get that. No, they're, like I said, they're making do with what they have. They solve the mystery with what they have. And if they don't have something, you know, they try to go out and make do with what they have, or what they can get their hands on. But, you know, like I said, I think it kind of goes along the lines of, you know, just like in real life situations, you know what I mean? Like, you think about it in terms of, you know, in life, you're not always going to have everything at your fingertips, you know, things that you need, but sometimes you got to kind of get creative. And I think that's the word I like using in this topic, is being a creative. You see Mystery Inc. gang, they're so creative with whatever they do, whether it's building a trap or, you know, designing a costume or, you know, and it's neat, you know, and I don't know, like I said, it's just the creativity that the Mystery Inc. gang has used. It just kind of, it makes kids and adults use their imagination a little bit more. And I think that's really neat, because you think about it, it's, if everything was just handed to them and they're like, here, then it's like, it would take the fun out of it. You know what I mean? So as they're going throughout the mystery, as they're going throughout the episode, when there's something that they don't have, you know, they get creative, and it's like, okay, what am I going to do? And Fred uses his imagination and he kind of designs the trap. Or, you know, Scooby and Shaggy, they'll design a costume and then they'll put it to, or, you know, maybe Velma and Daphne designed it and then Shaggy and Scooby threw it together, you know, and they wore it. And so it's really cool. So I think the creativity and being imaginative with it, it kind of goes hand in hand with, like I said, making do with what you got.
Yeah. Derek?
Yeah, I think the word that I think really caught my attention with Cam's point was creativity. There's so many times where I have projects at my job where I'm not really given a whole lot to work with, whether it be copy to use in an email or the images I'm given are just really bad. But I kind of just have to work with what I'm given or what I can find. And like sometimes it's not always how I would ideally like it, but I got to make it work, and I have to make it satisfactory for my manager, for our marketing team, for the CEO when he gets to look at it. It's all about like resourcefulness and just kind of having to figure out how you can make what you have the best it can be, even if it's not that great to begin with. I mean, even if you think about it, aside from Fred's traps, how about thinking about Shaggy and Scooby trying to make food, and they go into like an abandoned cafeteria or food court or whatever, and they're just finding like a jar of olives, and you know, who knows what they're going to find in some of these places, but they make do with what they find. And hopefully they get a good meal out of it, however they do it. I always think about the video game Scooby-Doo Unmasked, where you're literally just finding all these random food items that Shaggy has to like make a soup with, and you're throwing ice cream in there, and you're throwing some really disgusting things for a soup, but they love it and they're making it work. So I think that's something that I guess I also never really thought about coming out of Scooby-Doo with, but I do have to apply it to my everyday life. So I definitely had to learn it from somewhere.
There are some really disgusting things that they eat in general. And I'm not sure whose idea that was to make them eat the most disgusting things ever. But I wonder sometimes if the people that thought of these, if they had tried them, you know?
Well, I'm going to do a shameless promotion here, but when we do episodes on that Groovy Scoopcast at the end of every season, Shannon and I will pick a disgusting food item that they eat throughout the season that we see, and we'll try it. We have tried chocolate covered pizza. We have tried pizza with chocolate syrup and ice cream on it. And then we had a sundae with like hot sauce and pastrami. It's never pleasant, is my point. It's not fun, but we will go out and we will make it, and we will make it to the best of our ability, accurate to what we saw in the cartoon, and it's so nasty.
That's funny. There's an Instagram account, The Art of Scooby-Doo, and he has done a couple of live things where he's done eating some really gross stuff. The one was the sardine chocolate marshmallow sandwich. Oh, it was horrible. And he ate a lot of it in the video. And then later I asked him how he felt, and he said, oh, I was sick for like 6 hours.
My favorite reaction when he was eating, he was like, oh, it's not that bad. And he kept eating it. And I was like, I was trying to comment as fast as I can. Stop. You're gonna hurt yourself. You're gonna hurt your stomach.
Shannon and I were on the mic when we were eating the sundae with the hot sauce and stuff, and she swallowed it so fast. I don't even think she tasted it. And here, we're on the mic, like we're recording, and I cannot swallow it. I'm like, this is so gross. Going, Derek, just spit it out. I'm like, I have to do it. You finished it somehow.
That's so funny. Bradford, what are your thoughts on making do with what you have?
Well, I thought of it more of like from a character, like trait, personality side of it, and making do with what you're capable of, more so than like, whatever physically is there. And I think like the first thing that came to mind is like how Fred always has Shaggy and Scooby serve as the bait, which, if you look at everybody's character traits, they don't seem like they're the best option because they're scared of this thing, but he's making do with what he has. He knows that they've done this before, that he knows that when they get chased by the monster, they'll come through, So I think from that side of things, I feel like it helps teach a lot about, being comfortable. Maybe you're not the best at everything. You do have some talents. If you get put into a situation where it doesn't seem, like something you're going to be great at, you make do with what you can do. And, you push yourself and try to do the stuff that you don't think you're very good at. I think it's a really good part of the show, like we were talking about earlier, with everybody's different traits and stuff, the way that they all mix together, because everybody on their own, working with what they have, they can only do so much. They can only go so far. So I don't know. I just that's just, for some reason, that's the way I looked at it when I look at the question. But yeah, I think it really helps show that even if you're not the best, if you use the talents you do have, you still are able to accomplish what your goal was. And I always thought that was a really good message.
Yeah, That's a good way to look at it. Wendy?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I wasn't thinking of it from that perspective, but that is an excellent and very valid way to look at it. When I think resourcefulness, the only thing that comes to mind right now is MacGyver. And I keep picturing like 7-year-old Angus MacGyver with like a poster of Freddy and a trap on his wall and being like, that's what I want to do when I grow up. Like, that's what I'm thinking of now, because nobody's going to tell me that the creators of MacGyver that they weren't inspired even minorly by Scooby-Doo, because every trap that Freddy has ever built is very reminiscent of the stuff that MacGyver throws together. You know, there's an episode of MacGyver where he diffuses a bomb with a hockey ticket. And the way that they frame it, I mean, like, obviously I wouldn't want to try it in real life, but they frame it so well that, you know, it makes sense. But I definitely think that being resourceful is something that everyone would benefit from learning that when they're young. When I was little, my dad always said, well, if something's broken, then you can't really mess it up any further, so you might as well try and fix it. And so I'm very grateful that he instilled that in me, because I am someone that I consider myself to be very resourceful. When there were things that I wanted that we couldn't afford, I made them myself. And that's very much another of the things that I think we learn in Scooby-Doo, that we don't even realize that we're learning it. Like, they're depicting it and it's so subtle and yet so obvious that you're just soaking it up like a little sponge. And I think all of these things contribute to how you do grow up and the way that you are and the things that you do. Like, it was such a huge part, I think, of all of our lives, that it would be a lie to say that, oh, well, it's just a coincidence that all of these lessons that we learned were also in Scooby-Doo. I mean, I think those things go hand in hand. I'm sure our parents and other experiences played into it as well, but there's no question Scooby-Doo laid, or at least built on, a foundation in a very positive way, in a way that, like Cameron said earlier, like, no other cartoon is like that. Are there cartoons that have good messages and good lessons? Yes, there are. Of course there are. But I don't think that any of them quite completely encompass all of the things together in one show that was so consistently positively reinforcing them. Scooby-Doo is just, it's very unique in that sense, where every episode you can find something like that in it that you can learn from. And I find now, when I watch old episodes and I think about these panels that we've had, and I think about the questions that we've asked and what people have said, and the more that I watch it now, the more I'm just amazed at, like, what a great job they actually did do with it. I mean, it deserves praise, because they really knocked it out of the park when they made this show. And yeah, being resourceful, it's whether it be, like Bradford said, like more of like an internal resourcefulness that can manifest physically, like what are you good at, what is your ability, and be resourceful that way. But in a physical sense too, you know, use what you've got around you. You're not always going to have the stuff that you need or that you want, but sometimes you can just make do with what there is. And if you are in a situation like the Scooby Gang often is, where somebody's in trouble or there's danger or something, you don't have a choice. Either you find a way to make it work, or you go home and you give up. And I love that Scooby-Doo never taught kids to give up. Mm-hmm. Quite the opposite. Scooby-Doo has spent 50 years teaching kids that you don't give up, that you keep pushing, you know, and if you're doing things for a good reason and a good cause and you're helping somebody, it's worth taking the time and putting in the effort to do it. And you can be creative and make do with very, very little that you thought you couldn't do that, but yeah, you can. And there's something very satisfying about that, especially as a child. You think back to when you're little and you do something that you thought you couldn't do, and you feel proud of yourself. You've accomplished something. And I think that that feeling stays with you for your whole life. And the more times it happens, the better it is, because it just keeps reinforcing the need to do it. That it's good to do this. Good things will come from this. I don't think anything bad comes from being resourceful, you know, whether it's with your items or with money. You know, you can make it yourself instead of going out and buying it. I mean, we never see the gang whip out their wallet. Well, that's not true, because Freddie pays for the Cupid doll that he wins in Foul Play and Funland. But very few times do we see them. Right. Very few times do we see them, you know, needing money for something or using money for something, but they are always finding the things that they need to make this work to get the job done. And that's a great lesson to teach children, and a great lesson for adults too, because I feel like we all can benefit from just having that as a reminder to us that, like, yeah, you can make do, you can be resourceful, and creativity is a great thing. And you can't, there's a really great quote, you can't use up creativity. It just makes you make more and more of it. And that's true. The more creative that you are, the more creativity that you have. And the Scooby Gang are definitely creative in everything that they do. And I am sure that they have inspired children and adults alike to try something that they wouldn't have tried before, or to realize that they could do something that they didn't think they could do with very little. And it's just a great feeling. And that's good, especially for kids, but for everyone.
And you bring up a good point. That was not one of the life lessons that we had on the list, to never give up. And I mean, you don't ever see them just say, oh, forget it, we're not doing this, and walk away. So, yeah. The next life lesson is it's normal to talk to your dog. This could be any pet, not just a dog. For me, I talk to my dogs all the time. They know more about how I'm feeling than anyone else, and I am very thankful that they can't talk, because I'd probably be in trouble if they could. Bradford?
I think it seems like today it's a lot more normal to talk to your dog, just in general. I feel like I see a lot of people talking to their dogs all the time, and nobody acts like it's a big deal. And I mean, part of me does wonder if maybe Scooby-Doo, you know, helped normalize that for everybody. Maybe it made, you know, everybody feel a little more comfortable doing that. But as I was thinking about this question, I think, I mean, I don't know if they meant to like put this in there, but I feel like Scooby being able to talk helped show that, like, you know, everybody kind of like has a voice and has like thoughts and opinions on things. And it's like, I know, you know, like in real life, your dog can't, you know, say anything back to you, but you know, everybody has thoughts on things. Your dogs probably have thoughts on things, you know, but making Scooby more of like a humanized like part of the team definitely, like, just, I don't know, opened my eyes to the fact that, you know, even though maybe somebody doesn't talk a lot or say a lot of things, they're still, they've got a lot going on. They have opinions. They are an important, like, you know, member of the group and all that kind of stuff. So I guess that gets a little off topic of talking to my dog, but I don't know. That was another little thing that came into my mind when I was thinking about that question.
You bring up that Scooby can talk, and normally, of course, a dog can't talk. A few years ago, I saw a product that you could put around your dog's neck, and supposedly it would translate what they were thinking into actual words. I never bought it, because I was just like, that's not even possible. But
That seems a little scary.
It does. It does. I'm not sure. I mean, you know, my big dog is pretty vocal. He pretty much tells me when he wants food, or he wants to go outside, or he wants attention. I don't really think I need him to talk. Derek, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, kind of to Bradford's point about like Scooby talking, kind of changing the way you think about the animal. I think that's not even necessarily exclusive to Scooby. I think cartoons where animals talk kind of give you a little bit more of a idea of communication with your pet or animals, and it kind of allows you to kind of, I don't want to say like imprint like your human idea or that to an animal, but you can kind of decipher a little bit of a personality out of your pets. For instance, like with my dogs, I have a little dog and a big black lab, and Miko, the small dog, like he's just such a mama's boy, and all I can think of is him like just sticking his head like mommy, 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 and wanting to go and hang off my mom. And then there's Maggie, my lab, who I think like, yeah, she's like kind of a spin image of Scooby when it comes to just always being happy and like kind of having a smile on her face. And I do talk to her, I'll be like, hi Maggie, how are you? Or why are you in here? Like I do audibly talk to her, and we like to joke that she kind of understands us in a way, because we would ask her questions when she was a puppy and she would shake her head as if she's saying no. And we kind of like to joke that she knows what the word no means. So if we ask her a question, she'll shake her head, and we're like, oh, no, you're not having a good day. Are you a good girl? And she'll shake her head. I'm like, oh, no, what do you do? No, I think talking to your dog is completely normal. And I think that people need to do more of it, because I think that they're man's best friend, of course. I don't think there's anything wrong with it.
Cameron?
I've always been an odd kid because I've grown up on a ranch. So I'll talk to my dogs and the cattle and the horses, and people, when they come over, they're like, who are you talking to? And I'm like, oh, I'm talking to Bessie and the cow. And they're like, oh, okay. And I'm like, oh, it's just normal to me. I think it's normal. I mean, animals are people can judge you all day long, but animals won't, you know what I mean? In a sense. And I love that about animals. So do I talk to my animals? Yeah. Is it weird? Probably, but I do it anyways. When I think about, how the gang talk to Scooby and stuff like that, to them, to the gang, it's so normal. And you watching the cartoons that go around, and I think Scooby sometimes thinks more of himself like a human, because they'll be like, get that dog, or where's that dog? And he's like, dog, where? And he looks around, and that's the famous line, and everybody knows it. And to me, it's always been funny. So like when I watch a Scooby-Doo cartoon, when I was a kid, I always loved that, where he goes, dog, where? And he's looking around, because it's like he can carry on a full conversation. Yeah, sometimes he has a bit of the slurs and stuff like that, but you can still understand them. It's funny, it's cute. I love how the gang talk to him, and it's so normal. Some people think, when the cartoons are like, oh, that's weird. Or how other people sometimes will pick it up and they're like, yeah, that's cool. You got a talking dog. I love it. And so I think it's really special. Like Velma and Daphne and Freddy, they can talk to Scooby all day long, but Shaggy can understand them. Even sometimes when Scooby's talking real fast and, you don't understand what he's saying, Shaggy's like, he wants a pickle and, sardine sandwich. And it's like, okay, there you go. So, and I think it kind of goes along like with what Derek and Bradford said, it's kind of like man's best friend. It's kind of the connection that you have with an animal, you know what I mean? And I think it's kind of special because, there's been other cartoons like Pound Puppies or, Crypto the Super Dog or other stuff. And it's dogs, they'll talk in there and stuff like that. But with Scooby, I feel like with the speech impediment, and I feel like with how he connects with other people and how he, he's a dog, but yet sometimes he still acts like a human. I think it just sets himself apart, and it shows how strong of a connection a person can have with an animal like Shaggy has with Scooby. So I think it's, like I said, I think it's very normal to talk to, like I said, I talk to animals, and I don't know, I guess it's weird, but it's what I do.
And you make a good point too, that people will judge you. I mean, I can say something to my dogs and my dogs are thrilled that I'm just paying attention to them.
Right.
I say something to my kids and they're like, who are you? Why are you talking to me? Like, I'm not even listening to you. Right. So yeah. Wendy?
Yeah, I love this one because, I mean, I would wear a shirt that says animals are people too. I think that all animals are a lot more intelligent than what we give them credit for. And I absolutely talk to every animal that has ever wandered into my yard. I haven't had a dog in a long time, but anybody that follows me on Instagram knows that I have squirrels. that I love very much. And I talk to them all of the time. In the wintertime, we actually have a lot of chickadees that have learned to come to my hand. And my driveway is quite long. It's about a quarter of a mile long. And if I'm going out for the mail in the wintertime, I always have to have a pocket full of peanuts because the birds will follow me all the way out to the mailbox. And then there's some that live out by the mailbox that wait for me at certain times of the day if they hear me coming or whatever. And people ask, like, how do you tame them? How do you this and that? Well, I haven't tamed them. They are still wild and they live outside, but if you want them to learn that you are a safe person and that you are someone that cares for them, you tell them. It's that simple. You tell them, you talk to them, you let them learn your voice, your manner, how you treat them. Animals remember how you treat them. And I feel like I also, and I apologize if anybody here does this, it's just not for me, but people that talk to their pets in like baby talk, I feel the same way as people who talk to little children like that. And I'm like, you're not doing them any favors. I can remember being like 4 years old and I hated being treated like I was a little kid because in my mind, I wasn't a kid. If we got together with friends or something like church potluck or whatever, and oh well, you have to go sit at the kids' table. I hated that so much. I have this very vivid memory of being somewhere at that age and being told that I would have to eat like at the kids' table, and me like looking at my dad and my dad knowing exactly what was going through my mind, and him being like, it's okay, just do it, it's all right. But he understood that because my parents didn't treat me like a child, and so when other people did, I really hated it. I resented that they expected me to go and sit with the children, because I was like, no, I want to come and talk to the adults like I do at home all the time with my parents and my family. And I feel like the more effort you put into something, the more you're going to get out of it. I'm not positive about this, that I've got the age right, but I believe that the general consensus is that dogs have the ability to like reach the intelligence level of like a 4-year-old child. There's some pretty intelligent 4-year-olds in the world. There really are, when their parents like put effort into raising them and treating them like they're mature, and they get mature very, very fast. That's actually really impressive. And to think that your dog, just because he can't vocalize the way that you can, doesn't mean that there's like nothing going on up here. Yeah, he's having thoughts and stuff, and yeah, he's comprehending things. Dogs that can spell, that's a thing. That's not a joke. That's not a trick. Like that is a real thing. Dogs that can be taught how to spell stuff. And so I think, well, if you wouldn't talk to a person like they're stupid, why would you talk to a dog or your squirrel or your animals? Some of my friends like to make like Disney princess jokes, because I'll send pictures and stuff of like, there's a bird in one hand, the squirrel's sitting in my lap, and I'm talking like my best friend is there, and I'm having like a vocal out loud conversation about the weather. It just is what it is. I don't even think about it. I just do it. And, squirrels, they're very intelligent. They misbehave a lot too. Yeah, they do, but they talk back, and sometimes you can understand each other and sometimes you can't, but it's not going to stop me. I go outside in the morning to, put food in the feeders, or my one squirrel, Hermie, she's the one that always comes, and I make an effort to like go out and sit with her and feed her and stuff, because I want her to be very tame. And I go out that door, and if there's anything around, I'm like, oh, good morning. Where are you? What have you been doing? Are you hungry? It is what it is. It happens. We had a census recently in Canada, and a few weeks ago, the girl that was delivering it, she knocked on the door, and Hermie, my squirrel, was outside, and she went up to the girl right away, and the girl was like, oh my goodness, like, wow, this little squirrel. And I said, yeah, she's all right, she's friendly. And Hermie crawled up her leg, like, immediately. And she's like, oh, wow, I can't believe it. And I said, Hermie, don't, Hermie, you don't know if people want you to be doing that. And she went back down on the ground. And the whole time, I mean, I was kind of standing like inside the door because I didn't have a mask on, because I kind of saw her before she knocked. I didn't have a mask, so I had like my leg propping the door open, and Hermie was just up and down my leg. And the girl was so distracted. She was trying to tell me what she wanted, and she was so distracted by this that she couldn't get any words out. And finally I said, I'm like, Hermie, I will feed you when we're done, but right now, go sit on the bench. And the squirrel went down my leg, back outside, and she sat on that bench until we were done. And it was the highlight of my entire week. The girl says, well, okay, that, here's your census, and I better get going. And she says, have a nice day. And she turns and walks away, and she stopped and she turned around and she said, bye, Hermie. I don't know. It brought me so much joy in that moment, but yeah, absolutely. Animals are people too. No one is going to convince me otherwise. They deserve every bit of love and respect that you would give to another human being. They are not stupid. Scooby is not stupid. He's a very intelligent dog. And there's no reason that we shouldn't assume that regular dogs and cats and squirrels and everything else have the capacity to understand at least a very basic amount of what we say to them, or at the very least, they can understand love or hate. Yeah. You belt a dog in hate, and the dog understands. He understands. In the same way, if you pick him up when he's hurt and you hug him and you say, I love you, he understands enough of it to make it worth doing, is my point. Like, definitely. And I think that Scooby, more so than any other cartoon dog, because Derek's right, he's not the only one that talks, and he's not the only one that is loved by the people around him. But I think that Scooby did a great job of humanizing animals as your friend or a part of your family. That's the one thing I love about more modern Scooby series and movies, is that they do seem to put a lot of effort into saying, Scooby is family. He's our family. He's not just our dog. He's not our pet. He's our family. And I think that's really important, because too many people, they don't deserve to have a pet, in my opinion. If you're not going to love it, if you just want something that's there, like a trophy or something that when you're bored, you can pat it on the head and then forget about it for the other 23 hours of the day, buy a robot dog. You don't need a real one. That's not fair to them. And, I think we could all learn a lot from how Shaggy and Velma and Daphne and Freddy, how they treat Scooby, and apply that in our own lives to other animals too. I think that is a very positive thing that we could do and learn from the show.
I love your video that you posted the other day with the squirrel in your lap and you're petting it. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, that is so cute.
Wendy,
Yeah, I love it.
You're like the Canadian version of Snow White. So I just,
Yeah.
I just need to tell you that.
Thank you. I love that. I take that as a very, very nice compliment.
You should.
So we have one more topic, and this was a topic that Cameron brought up. How did Scooby-Doo help find your true character in life? So Cameron, we'll let you go first.
Okay. I brought up this topic because, growing up as a kid, I wasn't always a popular kid. I got bullied a lot when I was really younger. And, I love Scooby-Doo all throughout life. I've heard different people talk, like, they're like, I've really had to put Scooby-Doo away through a portion of my life because I didn't want people knowing. And I've been a person that has always kind of marched to my own beat. I have a brother and I have a sister, and they've always been people that have, and I love them to death. I'm not saying anything bad about them, but they always been somebody to kind of follow the crowd and kind of go with the flow. Me, on the other hand, I've always, like I said, just kind of stuck to my guns, and I am who I am. If you don't like me, I'm sorry, but that's just who I am. And when I was little, I would always, tell people about, me collecting Scooby-Doo. And as I kind of started going up throughout life, I never was ashamed of it. And people would always say it's weird. People would make fun of me about it. But then when I got up into high school and college, people thought it was really cool, and people commended me on being myself, being original. They're like, because you're not afraid to be who you are. You stand out. You're an original person. You don't try to be like somebody else. And I feel like that's what Scooby-Doo has helped me do throughout my life. You watch Scooby-Doo in the series, you watch the gang, they're themselves. They don't try to act like somebody else. They don't try to be different. They are who they are. And are they goofy? Are they silly? Are they fun? Yeah, they are. That's what makes them original. That's what makes them fresh. You know what I mean? And so going throughout life, like I said, it's I've always had to stick to my true character, because when you try to, and I think that's what Scooby-Doo's really resonated. I think that's the main thing he's resonated to a lot of kids and adults. You got to be who you are. And it kind of goes along with the thing. You can't find real love until you love yourself. And I feel like that's what Scooby-Doo does for us as people. You got to love yourself. You got to love who you are. And it's really refreshing to always see the gang love themselves. Because, I mean, watching Scooby-Doo, whether I'm watching a series or whether I'm watching a movie, I always see how the gang, they're never like, you never see them go throughout the cartoon or the movie and they're like, oh my God, I hate the way my hair looks, or I hate what clothes I'm wearing. No, they embrace it. They love who they are, and they go on, they solve a mystery. And so that's their true character. And so I feel like, as a kid growing up, like I said, I try to always be who I am. And I feel like that's how Scooby-Doo teaches us to be your true character. Going back for like the older ones and stuff like that, the older Scooby-Doo series and movies, it was just, they never brought it up. As you kind of went on with some of the other series and stuff, there was a couple things, like I know, like a Mystery Incorporated, like Velma trying to change Shaggy a little bit. I hated that so much, because I was like, well, what are you trying to do? But then, like, Shaggy finally put his foot down. He's like, look, Velma, I am who I am, and you can't change that. And then Velma kind of realized, she's like, what am I doing? And then she left him alone. And it was kind of like a cool moment for kids to see, because it's like, you can have somebody in your life, and God forbid, I've had people in my life tell me, you need to change. I can't tell you how many times people have called my Scooby collection weird or disgusting, or I need to stop what I'm doing, and here's my thing. Scooby-Doo is such a fun cartoon, and he's a cartoon. And have I loved collecting them? Yeah. Have I loved starting my page? Yeah. Do I love what I do? Of course I do. I mean, it makes me happy. Am I funded by Warner Brothers by any means? No, I'm not. But I feel like in life, you've got to do what makes you happy. And I feel like when you're happy, you're the best version of yourself. And I feel like that's what Scooby-Doo's kind of done for me. And I feel like he's done that for a lot of fans. And I feel like that's why in our Scooby community that we have, I feel like that's why everybody connects well with each other, because you're truly who you are. You embrace who you are and you go about it. I feel like that's where the positivity comes in. And from what you four have said on the panel tonight so far, it's true. Be who you are, love yourself. I mean, it's such a powerful message. I feel like everybody needs to hear nowadays. And I'm not trying to go on a long rant, but you see that, like we've all talked about, there's so much negativity in the world. And I feel like in today's society, if you don't look a certain way, or you don't act a certain way, you're not considered a cool person. You're not considered like, a very, well put together person. Well, I hate that, because, sometimes people, in life, there's different walks of life. People are different sizes. People are different colors. People are different, have different sexual orientations. People have different religions. But you got to love who you are, and we all got to love each other. And it's kind of like when we very first started this panel, it kind of taught us in the sense that, Scooby taught us to all love one another, not to hate. And have we seen any hate in Scooby-Doo? No, we haven't. And I hope to keep it that way for 50 more years of Scooby-Doo. hopefully, I don't know what y'all's thoughts are as far as, Scooby-Doo, bringing out your true character, but that's how I feel like he's brought me out as my true character. I've never been ashamed to be who I am. I've gone throughout life being proud of being a Scooby collector and Scooby-Doo being a part of myself. Has it been hard to take those comments that people said? Yeah. but I just kind of like a duck. I just let the water roll off my back, like those comics, let them roll off my back and then keep on going on. If you go throughout life and people are mean and stuff like that, they're going to get you down. And when I watch some of the Scooby-Doo cartoons and the movies, it's really powerful to see mystery incorporated. When like, take for example Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed. I remember when, after like some of the events that happened, people were so mean to him, but did they let that get them down? No, they kind of started reminiscing on their earlier days and how they came together as a gang, and what makes them original, what makes them their true character. And they stood up and they all came together as Mystery Incorporated, and they solved the mystery. And I think that's so powerful, because in today's society there's so many things that are, you turn on the news, for example, you're going to see so many negative things. And I'd rather be watching a Scooby-Doo cartoon than the news, because to me, it's just, I like, we said this so many times, but you escape, you go into the Scooby world, and to me, it's so much fun. It's so pure. And Nikki and Wendy, and like I said, Bradford and Derek, I don't know where y'all stand on it, but Nikki and Wendy, I know that y'all said before, as going throughout life, y'all have had some tough challenges, y'all have had some tough trials, but when you watch Scooby-Doo, it's kind of like it helps you, and it helps you kind of escape a little bit. And I know Scooby-Doo is a cartoon, but you ask yourself, if you weren't a big fan of Scooby-Doo and you were on this panel today, would you still be like the same person that you are? I honestly don't think I would be. I feel like Scooby-Doo's brought a lot of good in me. But I don't know. That's just something you got to ask yourself. So that's where I stand on it. That's why I thought to bring it up as a topic would be so cool. Finding your true character. And I think Scooby-Doo's helped us do that as fans.
Yeah, for me, like, I went through a lot of trauma as a kid and as a teen. And, with the gang, I mean, they come in contact with all these monsters. And if it was real, that would be very traumatic.
Yeah.
But they never let that define them. They didn't cower in a corner because they always came in contact with these villains and, things that were trying to get them. It was always, they did what they had to do to overcome that, and, to get to that where they could unmask the person, and, then they moved on. And for me, I really feel like I didn't let a lot of the things that happened to me define me and make me feel like I couldn't actually live my life.
I love that.
Thanks. Derek, how about you?
Yeah, I think Cam's point about like his question of like, if you weren't like a big Scooby-Doo fan or collector or whatever, like, would you be the same kind of person you are today? I definitely don't think I would be. Growing up through, grade school and high school and all that, like I was personally bullied a lot for being so into Scooby-Doo and for my collection. And a lot of the times in high school, I barely mentioned it, to be honest. And it wasn't really until I finished high school that when I started my Do Central blog, and I just started to actually meet other fans and a lot of just people in general who were like, oh my gosh, like, that's so cool what you're doing. And it gave me a lot of confidence as a person, not just in my collection. I mean, like, yeah, I've become a lot more enthusiastic about my collection and a lot more open about it. Like, it's on my dating profiles nowadays. Like, I'm the biggest Scooby-Doo fan you're ever gonna meet, so let's go on a date. But yeah, and when I apply it to myself as a person outside of Scooby-Doo, like, when I came out as gay in high school, I think my confidence saw a big boost because I was a lot more honest about who I was and how I wanted to pursue my own form of happiness. And then in terms of my personality and how I, conduct myself with people, I do try to have like that idealistic, classic Scooby-Doo where like we can all be friends, and like, obviously it's not always, going to be the case, but I do try to see the good in what a friendship can bring. So I try to value that kind of friendship and explore, like when you think about the gang in general, they're always doing something. They're always going on road trips, or they're going to one of their friends' like tournaments or something. Like when Shaggy's like in a golf tournament, all of his friends are there, or they want to go to the beach and they're having a beach party, or like they do things. And I think that in terms of like my own life, and like I would love to be able to do that. Like, that sounds so fun. So Scooby-Doo can be an escape in that sense, because like I wish I was right there with them going on this, even though aside from the mystery that's going to inevitably come up in the episode, like I want to go to a beach party and have fire and hot dogs and dance and everything like that. That sounds so fun. But back to like, you know, the collecting and stuff, like, yeah, I think that I would be a very different person today, because then I'd be afraid to share, you know, whatever other hobbies I do have with another individual or with friends. All of my friends love it. Like they brag what they meet that, like, yeah, one of my friends is like a huge Scooby fan, and I'm always trying to pick up stuff for him because I just know it makes him happy, and it does, and they see that, and it brings a lot of happiness to me knowing that other people want to see me happy that way. So that's just something that I think in recent years has really sprouted from just being able to talk about my own interest in the cartoon with other people, because I got a lot out of it.
Yeah. Wendy?
Yeah. To answer Cam's question, absolutely would not be the same person if I had never watched Scooby or grown to love him as much as I obviously do. It's one of those things where, like we've talked about all tonight, it's such a subtle, there's so much subtlety in that cartoon that I feel like we've all learned so much without realizing any of it. But the fact is, you are what you eat. And that's not just food that you put in your mouth. That is anything that you consume as a human being. Television shows, what you read, the people that you associate with, all of those things that you take in, that's what you're eating it, you know? And so I think for all of us, we've taken in so much of Scooby and from such young ages that there's no way that it hasn't affected us in a major way, whether it was something that was conscious or that anybody realized or not. Because like I said earlier, all of the lessons in Scooby build on what hopefully our parents were already trying to instill in us, or that other people that cared about us, you know, were trying to tell us. And all of that positive reinforcement for a kid is like, that's how you ingrain it in people. And I love that about Scooby, that there was never anything bad in it to go into kids to like corrupt them or mess them up. You know, there's no moral ambiguity in it. The bad guy's the bad guy, the good guy's the good guy, and the good guy wins, because being bad is wrong. You know, hurting people is wrong. Helping people is good. And I think any kid who's watched a sizable amount of this show, especially the early series and stuff, got to affect you in a major way. Again, it's something that I said back in the very second panel. I feel like I need to apologize to everyone that has been bullied for liking something like Scooby-Doo. That I don't know what to say to that, except I'm sorry that happened, because that's ridiculous. That is ridiculous that anybody could feel the need to say things like that. I mean, thinking things is one thing, but to go to the extreme of like vocalizing that to somebody to hurt them is like, what something's wrong with you. That's not okay. That's not normal. You know, you need to watch Scooby, because clearly you need to be learning these lessons. You are lacking them greatly. If you were a Scooby fan, you would never say that to somebody about anything that they like or that they're doing, you know? So I'm sorry that was a thing for you guys. Growing up, I didn't know anybody that liked Scooby or that even really knew much about it, because it wasn't a big thing, you know, up where I am, very rural and stuff, and it just wasn't like a mainstream thing. But I never was teased for it, and my friends thought it was neat that I had something that I liked that much. My friend Crystal, her mom, would like watch for things at yard sales for me. One of my prized possessions, it's a little stuffed Mighty Star Toys Scrappy that she found at a yard sale and gave to me like for Valentine's Day one year. And I was like, I didn't even realize that she knew that I loved Scooby-Doo, if that makes sense. Because I didn't really, like I said in an earlier panel, it was only very recently, within the last few years, that I actually started thinking of myself in the terms of I'm a collector of Scooby-Doo. Scooby-Doo is not just something that I really like. And so if I see something that I really like that's Scooby, I might buy it. It's like, no, it's turned into like my half of my closet is just Scooby-Doo. Like this is more than just like a passing fancy kind of thing. And so I didn't broadcast it a lot. I mean, obviously my friends knew about it, but of course, when I was a little kid too, it wasn't to this extent at all, like clearly. But to realize that obviously I must have loved it enough that people that I thought didn't know about it did know about it, to the extent that they would get me something if they saw it. You know, they would associate Scooby-Doo with me. So it kind of made me a little bit unique for my area, because I was like the only one that was doing it. And it was kind of a bit of like a culture shock when I got to be an adult and realized, like, look at how many people do the same thing that I do, you know, because I was so used to being the only one for a really long time. And it's like, it's really neat to see that other people also share that same passion, you know. And I think that's kind of like an important thing, especially in collecting. It's like, you can collect stuff, but are you passionate about it? And what I love about all of these panels is that I feel like everybody that's been on so far, like they have a passion for Scooby-Doo for whatever reason. You know, we all have our own reasons for it, but like it is like a legitimate passion. I think that's why we all mesh together so well, and that we can sit down and be strangers and talk to each other. And, you know, maybe you're nervous in the beginning, but you get going and it's like the nerves are gone because you're talking to people that share your passion. Like there's no judgment there. There's no negativity. It's just all this one positive thing that we have in common. It's I don't know, there's not enough good things that you can say about Scooby-Doo, and I definitely think it deserves credit for helping to shape us into the people that we are, in hopefully only positive ways. You know, nobody's perfect. I'm certainly not perfect. I sometimes will watch Scooby-Doo now as a means of being like, here's a refresher in how you should behave. You know what I mean? Like I even now I feel like I need that sometimes, and because you see negativity and it's hard to not take it into yourself. It really is. And the fact is that's not good for you or for anybody else. It's hard not to do that, but look at all of the obstacles that Scooby-Doo and the gang face, and the people that don't like them and come up against them in the episodes and stuff, you know, try to hurt them, all these kinds of things. And they're like, oh, well, you're not going to stop us from stopping you. And they just do it. And I think that's a wonderful thing. And if we can like internalize a little bit of that and let our character reflect those really, all of the positive things that we've brought up tonight, like that's, how can anybody criticize that? I don't know. I don't see anything to criticize in that at all.
Yeah. Bradford?
So like, I mean, like all you guys, I don't think I'd be the same person, you know, if I had found Scooby. It's a show that's always made me happy. Like my dad always told me that the first time I ever watched Scooby-Doo was when I was like, you know, like a couple months old maybe, and I like was crying in the middle of the night. My dad, you know, went and got me, and he took me out to the living room, and he was flipping through the TV, and the only thing like Scooby was the only cartoon on at like 3 a.m. at the time, and I just like quieted down, and I you know, I was fine. So it feels like I've just been a fan since then. And then even, you know, as I got older and loved Scooby, the only way to watch it was either those 3 a.m. reruns, or if we rented a movie from Blockbuster. So my parents would record, you know, these late night blocks of Scooby so I could watch it, you know, during the day. And I'd watch, you know, the same few episodes, you know, hundreds of times because that's all I had to watch. But it made me so happy, and it made me comfortable with who I was, you know, being scared and all that kind of stuff. And so I was going into school, I was really, you know, comfortable and okay with the fact that I love Scooby, just because it was something that made me so happy that it was like, why not embrace it and be like, yeah, I love this. so all through school, I think everybody knew that I loved Scooby-Doo, and I was like the Scooby-Doo kid that just like, had all these T-shirts that had Scooby-Doo on it, wore Scooby stuff all the time, and just had a Scooby-Doo backpack, all that kind of stuff. And then the show, like Cameron was saying, like when he was in high school, I the same thing when I was in high school. I didn't really have a set group of friends. I just like got along with everybody because I don't know, like it's something I picked up from the show that just you could just talk to anybody, help anybody, whatever. So I just I would always go around all over the place, and I was still open with my love for Scooby-Doo. I think I had a Scooby-Doo Halloween costume that was the furry like Scooby costume. I wore that to high school a couple different years for like different things. But then I think one of the biggest ways that Scooby shaped me was just like, gosh, like 2018, 2019. Like I kind of like lost interest in like the kind of stuff that I was doing and wasn't feeling that creative and stuff. And it was just kind of like a rough couple of years or whatever. And I don't know. I had never like lost my interest in Scooby. Like my parents constantly give me Scooby stuff all the time for holidays and birthdays and stuff like that. And when the Lego set came out, I made sure I went and got all those Legos when those came out because that was so exciting. But in like 2018 or something like that, it was like I don't know, something I felt like I hadn't watched Scooby in a long time, so I sat down and watched it, and I got the idea to start writing Scooby episodes, and it really brought back some creativity, made me enjoy what I was doing again, because the shows just always made me happy, and I think I forgot that that's what it did for me. So it really like brought everything back, and I never was a part of the online fandom really. I didn't really know it existed until like 2018 or whatever. So I never had other people in my life that really got Scooby-Doo or watched it or like had any interest in it. So it was like at the same time that I started writing these things, all of a sudden here's all these people that also love this show, and I'm meeting all these different people and talking to everybody, and it really just like I feel like in the last year or so, even though everybody's been stuck at home and all that kind of stuff, it's been great. I've had a great time. All this Scooby-Doo stuff all of a sudden coming back into my life has been great. So I think it was fairly recent, but I think Scooby really helped me find like my true like happiness and what I really like to do and enjoy just recently. It's crazy. So I think that goes, like Wendy I think was talking about how Scooby's for all ages and that kind of stuff, and it just goes to show like I'm 30 now, and it's like it helped me feel happy and get back to who I was and everything now. So it's crazy.
How did you feel when a bunch of people in the fandom were doing your 31-day challenge?
That was crazy. I didn't know that many people followed any of the stuff that I put anywhere. So I don't have the kind of self-esteem where I think that stuff I put up anybody's looking at. So to see that happen was pretty cool. It was neat.
I feel like everybody on Twitter was doing it.
Yeah, it was crazy.
It was fun.
I'm glad people enjoyed it. It was neat.
So does anybody have anything else that they want to talk about? Any comments, anything? Right.
I mean, unrelated to everything, I wanted to tell Derek I really liked his shirt. It's unrelated to everything else going on.
I just bought it today, actually. I just bought it today at FYE. I was so excited when I saw it.
Nice.
It looks cool.
All right, so we're going to end this, but before we do, I want everybody to let me know where we can find you on social media. So Bradford, we'll start with you.
Well, my Twitter and Instagram is Higher Bradford, not so subtle message to the Warner Brothers people. And my website's bradfordwritescooby.com.
Awesome. Derek?
If you want to follow my personal socials, I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Derek T. Queen. My Do Central, which is like my personal Scooby-Doo blog, you can find on Instagram at Do Central. And then there's that Groovy Scoopcast. On Instagram, it's at ThatGroovyScoopcast, and the website's www.thatgroovyscoopcast.com.
Nice. Cameron.
You can find me on, like I said, I run Scooby-Doo and Cameron Too, and you can find me on Instagram and Twitter and YouTube under at Scooby and Cam, and then you can find me on Facebook at Scooby and Cameron.
And Wendy.
You can come say hi to me on Twitter. I'm at Wendy Loves Jesus. On Instagram, where I post about my paintings and stuff, and I'm working on a Scooby painting right now, so if you want to see how that comes together, please come over and say hi. I'm at Wendy Brydge, and I also have a blog where occasionally I blog about Scooby, but I like to talk about everything, and as anyone who has watched any of these panels knows, I talk a lot. So if you would rather not listen to my voice, but you do find some things that I say interesting, you can find my blog at wendylovesjesus.wordpress.com.
And I am at ScoobyAddicts.com. All of my social media links are on the website. So thank you all for joining me. This was a lot of fun, and we have obviously learned a lot from Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
That wraps up another mystery. I'm Nikki Blake from ScoobyAddicts.com. Thank you for watching the Scooby Panel. If you like these panels, please subscribe to my channel for more great discussions. A very special thank you to fan fiction writer and Scooby fan Bradford Smith, podcaster and Scooby collector Derek Queen, Cameron Bates from Scooby-Doo and Cameron Too, and artist, blogger, and Scooby collector Wendy Brydge. Scooby and Shaggy were voiced by Scott Innes. Check out Scott's page, Scooby's Meddling Kids with Scott Innes, on Facebook. Art by Will Davenport. Video editing by Mike Burns. Music composed and performed by Bovine Nightmares. Please join us next time for our discussion with special guest Scott Innes.